The time is 6:01. We'll call the regular scheduled meeting of the Southampton School Committee to order. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have in our packet the minutes of, anybody?
I did not print
I
that.
didn't see him. 9/8, I think they,
Did you? Yes, please.
I only brought one now. I can bring it
That's
next time if you'd like.
September 8th, 2021 minutes. We would have gotten in our packets
Yeah.
this afternoon.
okay, this afternoon it came?
Yep.
Okay, no, I haven't seen it yet.
Do we want to act on it, or do you guys want to take a couple minutes to look at it on the internet, or what do you want to do?
The Wi-Fi is down, so it's a little slow on the internet.
Okay,
So maybe
we will hold off on the September 8th minutes then. See if we come back to it when things come up. Next on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public that has a connection to Norris may speak at this time. This is not meant to be a Q&A nor a debate. Speakers, when identified, should state their name, connection to Norris, and make their statement. Any supporting documents and/or material should be emailed to the committee at southsc@scm.hr-k12.org. Shall we start with 15 minutes? No speaker, more than 3 minutes apiece, until everyone's had a chance to speak.
so moved.
Motion made by Austin, seconded.
Oh, sure.
Seconded by Julianne. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any member of the public?
My name is Carol Barkham. I live at 78 Pleasant Street. I have a child at Norris as well as at Hampshire Regional. I would like to request that the Norris School Committee not implement a vaccine mandate. Massachusetts is no longer under a state of emergency, and nothing in Mass General Law, Chapter 71, provides school committees with the authority to pass broad health measures. Just because other communities are doing it doesn't make it legally sound or free from liability. I fully understand that there are other vaccines that are mandated. The difference is that their mandates were not issued within a mere 8 weeks of the FDA authorizing their use. And the mandates were very likely not created by individual school committees on a town-by-town basis. DESE's asking for an 80% rate of vaccination. What justification do we have for demanding a rate of 100% for our staff, especially when so many have already been vaccinated by choice? Who are we trying to protect by forcing staff vaccinations? Less than a week ago, the AAP published that the mortality rate for children is 0 to 0.03%. The vast majority of the rest of the population who want to be vaccinated have already had the opportunity if they wish to have the level of protection that it provides. We should not be forcing vaccinations for peace of mind due to people being uncomfortable with the ideas of others being unvaccinated. That would imply that we're making decisions based on comfort level. If my comfort level doesn't matter when I want fewer restrictions, then other people's comfort level shouldn't matter when they want more. Creation of a policy should not prioritize one group's discomfort over another's. A lot of times during these meetings, the discussions start with, well, I think, or in my opinion. This gives the impression that your responses are things that you suppose or things that you feel rather than actual facts. It would seem more productive if we could stay focused on facts. I'm not trying to change your mind about the choices you make for yourselves or your family. I'm just asking you not to mandate medical choices for anyone else's. Some may consider me anti-vax, but in reality, I'm anti-mandate. And that is something you might really appreciate someday if someone is trying to force a medical decision onto your family that you disagree with. Throughout this pandemic, I have heard over and over again how amazing the teachers are. They turn their dining rooms, their kitchens, and living rooms into classrooms. They really thought outside of the box and did whatever it took. Why now are we treating them as if they're so easily replaced? And if we trust them with our children, why do we not trust them to make medical decisions for themselves? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I currently have a kindergartner and a third grader at Norris. I came and spoke at the last meeting against having our children wear masks while in school. I then had to sit here and listen to the superintendent propose a vaccine mandate for the teachers, which would also make them sign a letter absolving the district of any liability should the teachers you are forcing to be vaccinated get any adverse side effects from the vaccine they didn't want in the first place. Of course, however, this all comes from a place of keeping people healthy. If a vaccine mandate is about health and safety for your employees, wouldn't you want to take care of them if, God forbid, they were hurt by the very thing you are saying will protect them? The pharmaceutical companies are not liable for any injury that occurs from the products that they rush to get on market. Call me crazy, but but don't we usually feel better about doing something when we know there is a company that stands behind their product? I was left with a very bad taste in my mouth leaving the meeting. Since then, it has come to my attention that there are even further changes to the teacher vaccination mandate to include that those that are lucky enough to be able to obtain a religious or medical exemption from the vaccine will now be forced to wear a KN95 or similar mask at all times while on district premises, except when working alone in private individuals' offices. They will also only be allowed to eat or drink in non-public areas when they may be separated by more than 10 feet from others. But people who have been vaccinated and have just as much chance of spreading the virus to others are not held to these standards. How can we be okay with this? Is this what is coming down the pipeline for my unvaccinated children as well? Will they be segregated and separated into spaces in the building? Will their learning opportunities be diminished because of their vaccination status? While doing some research online, I also stumbled upon something I found quite ironic for the times we are currently living in: the school committee's non-discrimination policy. It was approved in 2013, so maybe none of you have read it, but would have to think that making rules that only apply to certain groups of people within the school community counts as discrimination. Can all of you honestly say you are carefully considering the potential benefits or adverse consequences of the decisions you are making or not making that might have on the human relations aspects of all segments of society? Are you encouraging positive experiences and human values for children, youth, and adults, all of whom have different personal and family characteristics and who come from various socioeconomical, racial, and ethnic groups? Because from what I can see, you are choosing to simply allow segregation and further divide the school community during a time when we should all be coming together. You are catering to fear that has been shoved down our throats for the past 19 months, and it has to stop. During the August committee meeting, when the idea of having teachers provide proof of vaccination came up, Mr. Lumbra stated that it sounded like we were going back to a time of asking people for their papers, and that was a period of time in which he did not care for. May I ask what changed? I 100% agree with him that this is a period of time we are moving closer and closer to repeating with every decision we make. I feel like all the rules and policies that are coming from those in power are just to make sure that they're covering their own behinds and not what is truly best for the students. Children are not the most vulnerable population for the virus, no matter the variant. The adults who want to be vaccinated have been, and making it an us versus them helps no one. Medical decisions are for children, should be made between their parents and the physicians. If DESE was that concerned about the health of the school's community, then the case of a severe outbreak of COVID, they would most definitely count online or remote learning as time on learning, because that is what would be safest for everyone's health. So what is it really about? My guess would be money and funding. COVID released money from what has been extended through 2025, according to what I found on DESE's website. Is that how long we're going to be having the same conversation? 2 weeks ago, I had to pick up my son from school because he coughed and had a tickle in his throat. The nurse informed me that for him to return to school, he needed a negative COVID test or to be home for 10 days. I informed her he was in no way sick and they would not be getting a COVID test and that he would be out for 10 days. Her reply was she's just following the rules. Well, at what point do we finally stand up and say the rules we're following are bad? and stop using them as an excuse to know what we do is to do what we know is right. While home for those 10 days, he was never sick once. However, he is now afraid to cough or sneeze or anything that might suggest he's sick in any way. They're all wearing masks all day long. Of course, they're going to cough and sneeze. What are we doing to these poor children's mental state? He actually apologized to me for coughing in school. He's 6. I felt awful, and I'm sure most of you would say, well, just give him a COVID test and he can go back to school. Simply complying with the rules and policies that I wholeheartedly do not agree with is the easy way out, and just shows the people making them that they're getting exactly what they want: control. I choose to take a stand and do what in my heart and gut is right for me and my family, and I will defend that freedom till the very end, which also apparently now makes me a domestic terrorist. Yes. Even so, who else is willing to stand up with me and say enough is enough? It's okay to admit that your feelings about the current situation we are living in have changed from where they were 2 months ago or 10 months ago. I know mine have from day one to now. Someone must be brave enough to stand alone and make the first move. I promise you will not be alone. 14 school districts, as well as DESE, are currently being sued for mask mandates, and I truly hope some of those judges find the courage to do the unpopular thing and file in favor of those districts. Masks needs to go, mandates for vaccines, and anything else needs to go. Parental choice needs to be reinstated for all. If it's a battle, who can make the most noise? Trust me, I can be very loud. Stop catering to the fear and destroying an entire generation of children. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Matthew Johnson. I'm Jennifer's cousin-in-law, 7th generation to live in Southampton. I was just informed this afternoon that my daughter also, after spending all weekend outdoors in the woods, running her dirt bike, being a kid with every other kid that's in our block and all of our family, we have never had a mask on. We have never been sick. We have very healthy immune systems. We eat right. We do the right thing. We stay at home. We don't go out. We don't care about what happens in society. We take care of each other. And now she came home with the same symptoms, sniffle, cough, and got sent home today, and we're out of school for 10 days. I can tell you right now, I make more money in 10 days than any one of you on the board makes in a month's salary, okay? I am willing to stay home, and I am going to get her through the 10 days, okay? These kids have lost so much in the last 2 years that they have to go home from a sniffle or a cough after wearing these masks for 6-7 hours a day. This is the second time I've worn a mask, and the last time was last month when I was here, okay? Those are the only times I've worn them, because I know full well that you people couldn't look me in the eye and let me talk to you with seeing my lips that's happening right now, okay? You guys would send me home, and that's fine, I get it. I'm not in to judge any one of you. I know you people are trying to just follow the script that has already been written for you, okay? I get it. But it gets to the point where we have to have some common sense that there's 9 kids that hang out together every day with no masks on. And my daughter came home from school today after I got the call from the nurse at 3:30 to say that, yeah, unless she gets a negative COVID test, she's not gonna be able to come back for 10 days. She rode her dirt bike for 2 hours before I came to this meeting. For 2 hours straight, nonstop, okay? Because she was out in the fresh air doing what she enjoyed to do. And that's what these family values that were instilled upon us for generation after generation.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you.
No,
You need
stop
to-
me for what?
you
No,
need to
because you
put
don't
your
want to
mask
look me
on.
in the eye and you don't want to see my lips talk as how frustrated I am with every one of you looking at me wanting to double mask me. You want to double mask my kids? I've looked your sad eye every time I've been here, okay? I'm not going to put up with it anymore.
You need to put
you
your mask
people
on.
need to get a spine.
Please put
people
your
need to
mask
get
on.
All right, okay, this is
Do you
not-
understand, though?
I
Do you
understand,
see
but
what I'm saying?
I'm not going to entertain personal attacks.
It's not a personal attack,
Make
okay?
your statement.
Okay.
Make your statement.
I'm making my statement. And do you see the hypocrisy behind this, though? That there's 9 children that all go to the same school, that go together on the buses, they interact with each other at lunchtime, they move around throughout the day, they all infect the school, and nobody's wiping up after all of them, okay? They're home all day. None of them are vaccinated. None of us are vaccinated. I'm never going to get vaccinated. These people are not going to get vaccinated either, okay? It makes no difference. It makes no difference. So you have to just get some reality checks together with everybody and figure out a way to make this work. Otherwise, what are we going to do all winter long when one kid gets a sniffle and the next kid in the same household gets to go to school and the other one has to stay home? How is that working? That's not working. That doesn't even make any sense at all. Do you understand where I'm coming from, though? I see you. You're looking me right dead in the eye, and I look right
Let you
back at
make
you.
your statement.
But does that make any sense, though, that 9 kids, one kid has to stay home and the other 8 kids get to go to school? That doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense. So what do we do? Do we have to start grouping up from neighborhood to neighborhood of who's vaccinated and non-vaccinated? Are we going to go down that route? We're going to have passports? We're going to have a stamp and a star on our shirt to tell us whether or not that we can interact with society and do what we have to do? This is crazy. You guys agree. You have to agree that this is craziness. It is craziness. Okay? All I would like you guys to do is go home this evening, pick up a Bible, ask your Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior, repent for your sins, and let Him make logical, rational decisions based off of our child's well-being. Okay? That's what I'm asking you guys to do. And you have the power to do it. And if you don't have the power to do it, then I can tell you right now that I'm going to be stuck staying home, and I'm going to be willing to give up my job and my livelihood for my family, and I will fight you guys tooth and nail, and I guarantee I'll take over at least 1 or 2 or 3 of these positions on this board, and we'll get it straightened out, okay?
All right.
So, do you hear me? You guys hear me?
We all hear
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick?
Hi, everybody. My name's Ivy Musa. I have a child at Norris and a child at Hampshire Regional. First of all, I would like to just say that I understand the pressure everybody is under. You're doing what you're being asked to do. I'm sure some of you don't agree with what you're being asked to do, but you have to run the risk of losing your job over that. So I'm sorry that anybody's in that position. I do not have anything prepared. I just want to say that as we're going through the school year, if everybody could just really make sure that they're looking at reliable data to make the decisions for our children. I had a similar situation with my 3rd grader. She was asked to stay out of school because she was considered a close contact, yet many other students in the classroom were not asked the same. She did not have COVID. She did not even show a symptom. Looking at what a lot of schools are doing, they're giving people who are immunized from COVID, they're not making them do any quarantining at all, but they're making unvaccinated students quarantine to the fullest extent. And my issue with that is that it's been proven multiple times that the vaccine does not stop the spread. So what you are effectively doing is segregating 2 different populations. You've got kids that either choose not to do an experimental drug, because this is not a vaccine, it is an experimental drug, and it's unfair to put our children in the line of fire and then, after, let's see what happens, and I'm so sorry that your child has an enlarged heart and can't play sports for a year. I'm so sorry. But you get to go home at night and enjoy time with your family, but we've got to deal with a vaccine injured or dead child. I have a friend who is a surgeon, a back surgeon at Bay State. He knows of 4 people already who have died within 48 hours of getting the COVID shot. I am not willing to put my children at risk for something experimental and on an emergency basis. I am asking that as you go through these mandates, that you please consider the children. Please consider not mandating the vaccine, not only for our children, but for our educators. That is completely out of line and unfair to do that to people. You can wear your 2 masks if you like, all you want, but don't you dare tell other people what to do with their medical decisions. We are at a precipice where if more people do not stand up against this, we are going to be lost forever, and we are heading back to a time of extreme control. Does anybody want that? Would you like it if they told you that you couldn't have more than 1 child? Because that's also been discussed lately. So the more that we just all say, okay, the more that we are going to lose freedom of choice, which is what this country has been founded on. Everything is being eroded slowly. So if we don't take stands against these things and ask questions and make well-informed decisions, we are going to all lose. I don't want to see any one of you guys die for the booster, but you could. This is an experiment. It is the largest experiment that's been done on the population ever. And you can frown and you can disagree with me, but I am asking that you seriously consider not going with a mandate for our staff or our children, because it's unfair to take away freedom of choice from people. Thank you.
Thank you. So, you're going to get to speak, but hold on one second. The chair wants to extend public speaking for another 15 minutes. Any objection? Go ahead.
Brian Musa, Southampton, 2 daughters.
I'm sorry, your first name?
It's Brian.
Brian, thank you.
To my wife's point, I just wanted to really encourage you guys to really do some research and not just follow the mainstream media or Dr. Fauci. I think we all know and see what's coming out with what he's done and the Wuhan laboratory and such. Going to the masks, so I see several masks. There's no seal. There's no seal. Is that protecting you? Who's decided the mask? Is it a black one? Is it the surgical mask on the box that says it doesn't stop viruses? Which mask? Do you know, sitting there for 1 hour with your mask on, you have 10,000 parts per million of carbon dioxide. Do we all agree that carbon dioxide is not meant to be inhaled? It's a toxin. Think about that when you're making decisions to force and mandate masks. It's child abuse, in my opinion. Now that you know our children are inhaling carbon dioxide, that's a fact. If you're wearing this, think about what you're doing. Other points that I'd like to bring up. Is anybody familiar with the studies and stats on Singapore, Israel, the state of Vermont, some of the highest incidence of vaccinated population, also with the highest incidence of COVID? Just do your research. Stop listening to the mainstream media, because I believe it's complete, all lies. And we just got to do the right thing for our children. Last point, carbon dioxide is a toxin, okay? And I do believe people are going to be held accountable. So think hard about the decisions you're making. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Dana Mulvaney. I'll change this up a little bit. A couple weeks ago, my daughter in 2nd grade was jumped on the bus by 4 first-grade boys. The boys were interviewed along with other people on the bus, and it was all agreed that my daughter did nothing to them. She didn't even stick out her tongue at them. Being a parent in this position, it's very unnerving to not know that there is little to no policy in this type of circumstance for if a situation happens on the bus. So I would like to see the bus policy rewritten with a standardized set of steps to follow. And there should be some sort of intervention with a school counselor, because 2 of the boys made comments and have a history of these type of actions So obviously there's something not right either in the home or the child themselves, and it needs to be evaluated more, not just a simple punishment from the school. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Can I speak again?
Possibly, yes. Anybody else want to speak for the first time? Everyone's good? Go right ahead.
A question, if anyone received the email that I sent out today. It had 2 links that I added to it, along with a question about money that had really nothing to do with the links, but,
The answer is yes.
okay. Did anybody watch those links? And if you're not allowed to say yes or no, that's fine. But they're from respected doctors, one of them being the one that developed the technology used in the vaccine. And he straight out said, over-vaccination is a problem and is not the first line of defense for what we are doing. We can't vaccinate our way out of this problem, and it's only making it worse. The second one, for all the people that didn't get the email, was from a double board certified school psychologist who literally told the person who was interviewing him for people to take their kids out of school, to take the masks off of them and do not put them in school because they are doing so much damage to a generation that it will take years of intensive therapy to reverse. Why is it that these people who are brilliant and certified by zillions of things and went to colleges and did all this research, we don't listen to them because we don't see them on the TV, and you have to really look hard to find them. But if Joe Schmo on Channel 5 comes out and says, go outside and lick the ground because that is going to protect you from COVID, 95% of the people in this room would go outside and lick the ground, thinking that it would protect them. I'm just begging for someone to use some kind of common sense. And you can't tell me that in the past almost 2 years, not at one point in your life, it didn't dawn on you that something about this is not what they say it is. It can't. And if it is, then I wish I could be that naive. I wish I could live in that ignorant bliss that you live in, because I can't. And I took my kids out of school last year. I'm not afraid of it, because if the stuff keeps going the way it is, I will. My kids will come home. And that's awful for them, because I know they have great teachers, and I love their teachers. And I stand up for their teachers just as much for them, because whether they chose to get vaccinated or not, that's their decision, not mine and not yours. No one in this room has that right to tell them that they need to do that or get weekly tested or wear KN95 masks or 2 masks or anything else. It must be so nice to live and sit in these places of perfection where you just toll out what everyone has to do. Because if your jobs were really if you really thought about it that hard, I don't think you would be doing what you're doing. Mandates are not laws. You can go against DESE. They're being sued, and God, I hope people win. But I don't want to add Southampton to those lawsuits, because I will, because my friends in other towns are already in them.
Thank you. Still have 3 minutes. Anybody else? Right, go ahead.
I'd like to at least kind of apologize for the harshness to begin with. I look upon the Lord Jesus to guide me in making sane, rational, logical decisions, and that's what I've done my entire life, and that's what every generation that has come before me that has instilled those values into me and has created this town for what it was. This town is a legacy among small town legacies in this area. It has natural defiance and sheer utter will to survive. That's what this town was made on. And by God, so help his name, this is what it's going to end up being. When push comes to shove, it's still going to be a God-fearing town, okay? So I want everybody to let that sink into their head for a moment and be able to take a few moments and look back on your own soul and determine what is right and what is wrong. And if you go back and you can study some scripture and you can repent and you can ask the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior and repent for wrongdoings that you have done, and we all do them. There is nobody in this room that is perfect. He will guide you to make rational, logical, ethical decisions for everyone's well-being. If there was truly a pandemic, everybody would be killing each other to get a shot. It's not the case. People are willing to give up their livelihoods and everything that they have worked their whole entire life for blood, sweat, and tears, and put it all on the line for the sake of their next of kin and their legacy to continue. And so help me God, I will not give in to it, okay? My final word, I'm letting it on the table. I'm trying to be as calm and compassionate as I can for you people. And you have to go home this evening and you really need to take some time to be able to let that sink in and ask the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior and let Him guide you in the paths of righteousness and make the proper decision. That's all I have to say. Amen. Okay?
Last call. Anybody else? No, I
think
everyone-
I think I got my point across.
You did.
I did.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
All right. 6:31, we'll end public comment. We're going to backtrack for a minute to the approval of the minutes, which everyone should have in their packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second by anybody for purposes of discussion?
Second.
Seconded by Austin. Take a moment, review them, see if there's any adjustments.
How's that here?
Sorry, I'm just a reader.
Is it just,
All right.
we're just waiting for you.
Go ahead. You
You're
can
good?
outvote me.
No? No changes?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We don't have any circulation of warrants. We're still signing those under the one signature rule. No announcements. Before we get to reports.
On the warrants, sorry.
Go ahead.
I did, there were warrants circulated by email. Are we required to sign those separately? I'm just,
No, right now, there's only one, it only requires my signature.
great.
But you should look at them,
I
and
did.
if you have a question, raise it.
No questions.
Okay. We don't have, say, we must have just missed it, but there should be correspondence. So I will note that we did receive the email this afternoon at 11:28 from Jennifer, and I believe the superintendent will be answering your specific question about the financial question that you asked in there.
That was purely just, like, I wasn't, like, implying anything, I was just curious.
No, you're gonna, I believe you're gonna get a formal answer. She's just doing the research to answer your question. So we'll note that, accept that into the record, that we got that. We also received a communication from Linda Brastard, which I'm probably saying wrong, Braastad, on October 12th at 11:14, asking the committee to consider changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples' Day. The committee will refer that email to the superintendent's office.
I think it's already illegal.
Indigenous
I think legally
people.
it's supposed to have already been done legally.
Maybe we just need to update the next calendar.
It came up a few years ago, and I think the committee tabled it. And then when you approved the calendar going forward, it was Columbus Day.
We received an email from a parent of a sixth grader, Mr. Gregory Bennett, a former school committee member, taking, paraphrase, but will accept the communication into the record of October 8th, 2021 at 6 p.m., taking objection to banning of the New York Times quiz. We'll refer that email to administration. We have an email from Stephanie Foss as an update on pool testing. Will Stephanie be joining us
Yes.
after the Westhampton meeting? So we will table that email and take that communication up when Stephanie's here in person for it. I don't have any other communications that came in. Okay? Next, we'll move on to principal's report.
Okay, as of October 11th, we have 469 students enrolled, pre-K to 6, with 44 of those students being school of choice students. We are going to be taking field trips approved at a case-by-case basis for in-state travel, but we are looking for those field trips to be within 15 minutes of school and generally held outside. So grade 1 is visiting Fletcher's Farm on Friday, October 15th, and kindergarten is visiting on Friday, October 29th. We had a professional development day yesterday as a district, and I'm sure the superintendent's probably saying something about this as well, but all teachers and staff at Norris joined teachers and staff across the district for professional development with the National Conference on Community Justice, and it was some social justice and equity conversations that were had. The Holyoke Gas and Electric Safety Demonstration will be this Friday, October 15th for K to 4 students, except those that will be on the field trip. Ray Gooley does a nice job of doing gas and fire safety with the kids. Bus routes have changed somewhat. I know all parents who had children who were affected by this bus change were communicated with, and that started today. And I did not hear of any issues at the end of the day of students riding home on those new buses. Trunk or Treat will be happening, sponsored by the PTO, on October 22nd out front of Norris School from 5:30 to 7 p.m., and they will be sending out more information about that. Picture Day is scheduled for Monday, October 25th, and we are hoping to have those pictures taken outside. However, if the rain or if the weather does not cooperate, we will have to make a spot inside. We will have an announced lockdown drill at the end of this month. I have to confirm with the Southampton Police Department, but we are looking to have it before the 1st of November. We will be having parent-teacher report card conferences. Well, actually not report cards, because report cards don't come out until December, but just conferences with parents. November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, it's on the calendar. Those are half days for students. We will be doing 4 to 7 on Wednesday night and Thursday night, and 1 to 4 on Friday afternoon. So look for some communication from your teacher. We'll do that via Zoom like we did last year. Let's see, ongoing items. I sent a link to the PPE inventory. You will only be able to see it electronically. The link is here. But we're up to date with everything, and anything that needed to be ordered has been ordered, so we're in pretty good shape with that. There's nothing that we're lacking. And some of the health and safety protocols that we continue to do are hand washing and maintaining the distance of 3 feet or more while inside, for the most part. And then students are 4 feet or more while eating in the cafeteria or have their masks off in the cafeteria. Our head custodian, Tom Lavelli, I forgot to put this in the report, but he has returned this week to full-time. So I will have an update on the MERV 13 filters in the HVAC system after he's got his feet wet a little bit, so for the next month. Any questions?
Thanks for that, Molly. Any questions? Good? All right. Next, Superintendent's Report.
Good evening, everybody. At the last school committee meeting, I was asked about the ramifications and repercussions if we decided not to follow the DESI mask mandate, and this is the response I received from legal counsel. There are a few possible ramifications and repercussions if a district decided not to enforce a DESI mandate. The first is that administration licenses require that administrators enforce DESI requirements. As such, failure to follow a DESI mandate could impact the licenses of the district's administrators. Additionally, your insurance company may determine that they will not cover any potential actions arising out of COVID cases if the district is not following a state-issued mandate. This could end up exposing the district to financial liability. Additionally, DESI could potentially modify the funding for the district. As such, administration can enforce the mandate upon families in order to avoid these potential ramifications by following the progressive discipline outlined in the student handbook. So I did want to talk a little bit about the routine COVID safety checks. I sent out a survey about a month ago asking parents that if pool testing was offered to their unvaccinated child, would they participate in the routine COVID safety checks? And at Norris, 61% supported pool testing, and that was 277 responses representing 402 students. The highest support came from Auntie Dunphy with 81.4% pool testing. So currently, we have 13 unvaccinated adults in the district, and 5 of them are from Norris. 3 are paras, 1 is a substitute, and 1 is a custodian. A couple weeks ago, Margaret Larson, the chair of Hampshire Regional, attended the Rural Schools Commission report along. I accompanied her there, and we met with local rural superintendents, legislators, and state subcommittee members from DESI, and it was really to argue for increased funding for rural schools with Chapter 70 funding. For example, with transportation, schools get reimbursed a certain amount after 1.5 miles, and in a rural district, we have kids that are transported closer than that because there's no sidewalks. So like urban schools get a bonus for being urban, we would like a bonus for being a rural school. It will also help with funding for special education as well. Statewide MCAS test scores came out, and more students had gaps in their knowledge in math and to a lesser extent English. The state did not administer MCAS in spring 2020, so the most recent comparisons are to 2019, and overall across the state, 46% of students in grades 3 through 8 were proficient in ELA, which is a 6% drop from 2019, and only 33% in math, which is a 16% decrease. I did meet with the school committee chairs on September 30th, and in that meeting, we discussed my evaluation, and that my evaluation would be in each school committee's hands until the All Districts Committee was formed through the 5-district working group agreement. And I've got information for you later on about that too. We talked about what other districts in the area were doing about vaccination policies. Did the role of personal beliefs play a role in that? And really a lot of high level of frustration towards CIC Health, which is the organization that's supposed to support, provide personnel support. And I would advocate for mask mandate to go through December 2021 at least. It's different for the elementary school, that's non-negotiable right now. And I've been doing classroom walkthroughs with principals where we talk about what does good teaching look like, best instructional practices. And it's been great that I've been able to see a lot of engaging classrooms and very student-centered classrooms here, more so than in other places in the district. So that's been wonderful. And that's the brief highlight of the superintendent's report.
Questions? Okay. Thank you. Not necessarily a question, but a statement. I would just note, so of the survey of the 402 students out of the 469, that's an 85% response rate from our population, just mathematically. And Mrs. Pluta, what is your total count of staff/support people within Norris?
Oh, about 90,
90, okay,
85, 90.
thanks.
Yeah, district-wide, we're at about 96% for faculty and staff that are vaccinated. District-wide, through all the schools.
Yeah, and without doing the math, I think if we have 5 that aren't, and there's 90, that puts us at about either 94 or 96% at Norris.
I think so, right around 93, 94.
I mean, I can do, yeah, we can talk about it afterwards. Next, Chair's report. I think the superintendent covered our conversation at the Chair's report meeting well. We had a general discussion about the proposed vaccination requirement, which is going to come up later. And that was more of, here is the superintendent's position going out to the individual school committees and the message there. And there was an opportunity for the individual chairs to give feedback, but I do not believe that any of that feedback altered any of the language that went out to the 5 committees for consideration. And when we get to that section, perhaps we can get an update on how the other committees that have already had it before them have dealt with it or addressed it. We were informed of a memo of understanding that only applies to Hampshire Regional regarding sick leave for staff that currently is not before Norris. We were just informed of it. I'm happy to share that with the committee afterwards, just for reference material. That is the extent of the chair's report. Hampshire Regional School Committee update.
Thank you. It was my first meeting. It was a lengthy meeting. It was a great to get back up to the high school, actually, for the first time in many years. In addition to that, I had a great tour with Principal Holtz. She was kind enough to take us around, a couple other members of the community as well, and to see some of the classrooms in action, and get a description of the procedure, of everything that's going on up there. And things seem to be going well. I think the most interesting part of the presentation had to be the student council representatives giving us an update on what their opinions are, what was going on in school. It was great to see the student involvement on the committee level, as well as a great update from the languages department and what they're doing. I believe they're working on getting a certification of biliteracy for graduates up there, and that's, I think, just a great opportunity for the students at the high school. There was a spirited discussion around masking and mask mandates. I think much of what she's going to get probably repeated here at some point, as well as around the vaccination policies. I think that about hits the highlights. I had my agenda, it was sitting in my car, and I meant to bring it in with me to go over it, but Superintendent Bonneville, Dr. Bonneville, I don't know if there's anything I'm missing.
Let me see.
Next time I'll be more prepared.
All right. PTO,
You hit it
and
off.
school council, well, that's 2 different committees. So PTO, we don't have an
I can give an update if you want.
Go ahead.
So I was at the PTO meeting the other night, and Kelly Pignatier will continue as chair. Jessica Soares is our new treasurer. Corinne Fergal is our secretary. She will continue with that. And then Abby LaValle, Karen Woods, and Teresa Maudsley are all going to be at-large members, which is nice. There were about 12 people on the Zoom the other night, which was really good. It's an increase in membership. We have, of course, the trunk or treat on October 22nd. They approved $300 in art supplies for our art teacher. Let's see. They're going to be doing a calendar raffle in the future. However, they don't want to overlap with the 6th grade committee that's also trying to raise funds for the 6th grade students to have some fun things this year. And the 6th grade committee is going to do a gift card fundraiser mid-November. We're also going to do a spirit wear order coming soon, so be on the lookout for that. We're using a different company, so it might look a little different, but when I wear my Norris School sweatshirt, I know everybody asks me where I got it, and so some of those newer kiddos in K1 and 2 probably haven't had an opportunity to get those yet. And that's PTO update. And then school council, I asked at the PTO meeting again, well, I asked in Tiger Talk, and I reiterated it at the PTO meeting. I am looking for 2 parent volunteers to serve on the school council at Norris, and it's a voluntary position. It's about once a month for about an hour after school, usually 3:30 to 4:30, unless our school committee representative is not able to make it at that time. We could make it at 5 o'clock to make it easier for families or for parents who want to volunteer. It helps me with the school improvement plan, keeps us in check, and it also helps with my budget process and where the money's going. So if anyone wants to volunteer to be on the school council and you're a parent of Norris School, you can just reach out to me and let me know.
And you're looking for 2?
2, yeah.
Okay. Anything on the collaborative?
Yep, the I actually attended the meeting on September 29th via Zoom. It was the first meeting of the year, so a lot of it was organizational. We're appointing all the roles in the committees. Todd Gazda is the executive director, and he went over all of his strategic goals, basically reviewed all of the executive director goals. He's new to this role. He was just hired at the end of the last year. There was an executive director that was interim that was running the collaborative last year. So this is now a permanent position. And there was just reports from finance, kind of an update on some of the rates for their special education evaluations. And one of the DYS contract administrators went over all of just did an overview. He did a presentation about what the DOIS collaborative role and how that works, and went over all the different, the kids who had gotten certificates and diplomas and just their successes that they've had in the last year. So and that was pretty much it.
Okay. The 5-district working group, we had a meeting, continued to discuss the outline and the understanding between the 5 communities. There continues to be a philosophy differential between, from my view, Southampton and some of the other communities on what is fair and equitable. But we will continue to meet and discuss that. At some point, though, in the future, I think the committee should place on the agenda our alternative options. If we, similar to our collective bargaining agreements, we continue to bargain in good faith until we hit a stone wall. In this particular case, we should continue to negotiate with the other communities until we feel that we can't go any further. And then we have our alternative course of actions as spelled out in the 1966 regional agreement on how to proceed without an agreement. If we can cross that bridge later, I think there's still probably another month or 2 before we get there. And before we do that, I think we should have a dedicated meeting or portion of our public session to discuss those options with legal counsel and perhaps select board, because it will require a vote of the select board to go down that route. Speaking of select board, do we have any words from our select board liaison?
Hi, everyone. I'll bring to you at our meetings the items that are discussed at the select board that have implications for the school and the school community. And I'll begin by saying the good news is that we finally have a fully staffed accounting department. We have an accountant by the name of Bradley Oskin, who began 3 weeks ago, and an assistant accountant named Ellen Krusek, who is just beginning her second week. John and I were involved in the recruiting and the initial interviews, so we're pleased with the candidates that are chosen and that they accepted the position. So hopefully your numbers and the information you get, and we all get, will be much more timely and more accurate as we go forward into fiscal year '22. The Select Board met last night and agreed to have a special town meeting in December because there are some items that have to be decided upon before the end of this calendar year. The date will be forthcoming. We'll get a date out in case the school committee would like to place any articles in the warrant. There's a period of time that they have to be in advance, a couple of weeks in advance, so that information will be coming out to you so that you can prepare your articles if you have any to present. You may have heard, I hope you have, that the Select Board agreed to organize a cost efficiency committee, which is comprised of 12 people, representing employees, residents, and members of committees and boards here in the town. And we're just in the formulation stages, so we ask that the committee itself decide who they would like to select to represent them in those discussions. I think everyone, especially the folks from the school, were significantly impacted by the fact that the override did not pass. We can't keep going back every year, asking for an override. And the other truth of the matter is we can't continue to live on a 2.5% increase every year. So somewhere between increasing revenue and reducing expenses is where we need to be. So we thought bringing together a core group of people with knowledge and expertise across the spectrum of operations and finance and human resources and things like that in municipal government, that perhaps we can start to address and make some plans to fill that gap that we experience year after year. And then finally, I'm sure you know that Southampton received about $533,000 from the CARES Act. That money was allocated based on proposals submitted from various departments, the school being one of them. And we're in the process of analyzing the utilization of those funds, and it's apparent that some funds have not been used and will be reappropriated. So you'll be getting some information about additional monies from that pool that may be available to the school, and ask that when you get that information, that money has to be spent by the end of December. And then looking ahead a little bit, we expect about $600,000 in American Rescue Plan funds coming in to Southampton, and you'll get more information on that and the scope of how those funds may be used. So there's some good news here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to pass on fiscal year '22 budget?
Yeah, Bobby and Stephanie are both on their way. I don't know if the meeting was going longer, so I apologize for my tardiness as well. Yes, we can go back to her.
Come back to that one. Okay. So that brings us to new business presentation of the Code of Conduct.
Okay, in your packet, you have the Norris School Code of Conduct, which is pretty typical in schools, and there's no real changes here, except maybe it's defined a little better. So our responsibilities as students and staff are to express one's own ideas, opinions, and feelings, and listen respectfully to others, respect school property and others' property, to do one's best and support others, and to accept responsibility for one's actions. Many students learn these responsibilities through instruction in our second step social emotional curriculum. But we understand that not all students, or we can't always be on our best behavior at all times. So when violations to the Code of Conduct occur, there are logical consequences, and the consequences depend on the age of the child or the children, the seriousness of the offense, and whether it is the first time or repeated offense. And certain violations are considered major. And in order to process these offenses, The adult who observed the offense will write a description and sends it to the principal or assistant principal. The principal or assistant principal follows up by talking with the adult that made the report to get more information and with the child or the children that are involved. The principal and assistant principal notifies parents and guardians, and the consequences will depend on the age of the child, the seriousness of the offense, and whether it is the first time or repeated offense as such. Principal, assistant principal have the option of using penalties as deemed necessary and appropriate, such as we start with, loss of recess and other privileges, after-school detention, notes or telephone calls to parents, or we request parent conferences as needed. Whenever any penalties arising from violations are assigned, there will always be communication between student, parent, and principal or vice principal. And repeated misbehavior may require additional consequences which are discussed between the principal or assistant principal and parent and guardian. Possible replacement costs if they damage property may also be required. Certain behaviors are much more serious and may lead to suspension. Also, students on IEP plans are treated somewhat differently based on, their disability, which is the law. We have some information here on how parents can help support their students on bullying and what to do. And then we have the bus behavior code of conduct as well, which is the Norris School Code of Conduct applies on the bus. And also other rules such as no eating, drinking on the bus, keeping the bus clean, follow the instructions of the bus driver, stay seated, keep your hands and feet and head inside the bus at all times. Riding a school bus is a privilege and bus safety is a priority. Parents are notified by mail or telephone if when their child rides the bus and might have an infraction. And students can be suspended from the bus for a day or more, depending on the infraction. And just like the Norris School Code of Conduct, it's we take the age and the seriousness and the repeat offender into consideration when we have infractions on the bus.
So
I'm not- I know-
we have 3 pages before us. Is the code of conduct all 3 pages? Or,
I would look to the superintendent for that. I'm not sure what.
so
legally-
the first page, Norris Code of Conduct, ends with the note, certain behaviors are more serious. And the second page is Southampton School District bullying policy, which I'm thinking is a reference material provided to us and not necessarily part of the code of conduct. And then you have
Correct.
bus behavior code, and then disciplining students with disabilities.
I would say the first page is where I'm asking you to vote on, just the code of conduct.
So procedural-wise, because this is the first time that this is before us, and annually this should come up, which I think by we, I mean myself and the superintendent have determined that this is going to be like a July/August agenda item going forward. We approve the code of conduct. The handbook is what comes out of the policy. So the policy is the code of conduct, which then develops the handbook, which is driven by the administration to do for reference points to do.
And some of this is just legal, like the disciplining students with disabilities, that's the law. And same thing with the,
So the second 2 pages are excerpts from the
Right.
handbook.
I should have just included the first page.
oh, it's good to know, though, with
I
the,
think the bus behavior code.
Well, specifically because of what was mentioned in public comment tonight, and just, I don't know where the discussion's gonna go when we go. I just remind members of the committee that if we're going to remain neutral in all names, do not utilize names, do not identify students, don't identify staff, that would not be appropriate at the committee level. You can talk in generics. You can certainly reference comments made in public session earlier in a broad sense without getting into names, right? So we're being asked to consider the first page. All right. So again, normally, going forward, this is a function of the school committee that's supposed to happen on an annual basis, and it is going to happen on an annual basis going forward in July. It didn't happen in the past July, so it's before us now. It's a policy, it's an existing policy, so I don't believe it requires the 3 reads. I think we can just approve it, or we can modify it. We can certainly table it for one meeting if need be. I'll open it up to the committee.
So we're saying the votes are just on the first page, not on the subsequent page?
We approved the code of conduct. Code of which they're saying is the first page, is the code of conduct, which I guess would be the kind of like the preamble of the handbook. It's the first page of the
Yeah.
handbook.
Currently, is there not a code of conduct that's been revisited for,
This is the code of.
this is the current
This
one?
is the code of
Okay.
conduct with some wordsmithing, I believe, to
That has
modernize
always
it a little
been in
bit.
our school handbook.
Yes. But I can't tell you the last time that this was approved. by
Okay,
the school committee.
Right.
okay.
At some point in the past, it was, and this is an edited version, which had minor, I believe, minor edits to it, so.
I think it said principal or designee, and it should be principal or assistant principal, since we know we have one. It might have said child, and we added child, children, because it could be more than one student. I mean, really wasn't,
Just from a procedural clarification point, I understand, I agree that the disciplining students with disability and the bullying policy are separate and distinct, and those really would be more part of the handbook. My question is just simply, with the bus behavior code, is not adopting that as a policy prevent it? Is that a separate code that is part of this, or is that, I guess I'm just a little confused on why
That's part of
that's
the,
not.
so this part,
Right.
bus behavior code is new to the code of conduct and goes with this. So you will be approving, this is just tips about
Yeah.
what to do. So you'll be approving to accept the bus behavior code and the Norris School Code of Conduct. This is part of the code of
First page and the
conduct.
second
And the
section of the
second
second
section.
page.
Right.
That's why I wanted a clarification.
Yeah.
right, and once it's approved, I'll make sure it gets into the handbook together and not separate, the way that is now.
Because I just want to make sure it's clear that the code of conduct applies on the bus. I think
Right,
that's the most.
absolutely.
That is the first thing, yes.
And I want to make sure that's made clear part of the policy. I don't
Yeah.
want that to be left out. Can I offer one, minor edit, purely typographical, striking the apostrophe of students under the third paragraph. We understand that students, it shouldn't be possessive, but pluralized.
Yes.
Thank you.
Keep going, Bill. That's the only one.
That's all I found so far.
Other committee members?
Yeah, I wanted to open discussion on the bus behavior code. So do we need a motion to?
This is on the table right now for discussion.
Okay, great.
Because bus behavior code is part of the code of conduct, which is before us right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this might require more nuance because, this is as far as monitoring, is a vulnerable time for students because the bus driver is driving the bus and there aren't any teachers on the bus to intervene if there's an issue. So it's really up to the kids to honor system enforce the code, which they're not always accurate in doing. So we heard from, one person during public comment that mentioned something that involves their family. I had a constituent reach out to me privately to discuss another episode. So it seems like there might need to be a little bit of a modification when it comes to busing. I think that it's hard if there's an incident of physical aggression on the bus that is able to be validated by administration. I think that it's appropriate, even for a first offense, to have a suspension of that busing for, I would say, a minimum of 3 days. I think that in combination with a possible consultation with the school adjustment counselor might be able to identify what are the precipitants of that episode and what are any supports that are needed for any student involved, whether there's someone receiving or, instigating the physical aggression, what are the supports that they need in order to be successful in continuing to feel safe and create safety on the bus, because it's really up to the students to create that safety, because there's no adult that's specifically able to enforce it at that time. So I wanted to float that out to the committee and see, if that was thought to be appropriate. Also keeping in mind that a student who has another student put hands on them on the bus, I don't see that student wanting to ride the bus the next day unless they're sure that the incident can't happen that immediate next day. It just seems like common sense that that child might be afraid to ride the bus in the future. And so giving a little cool down period might help all parties to calm down, be able to talk through the episode, meet with the counselor and see, all right, what needs to happen in order to make sure that everyone feels safe riding the bus and there are no further incidents.
So, not speaking to any specific incident that might have happened, I don't see how that currently is not the case, because the current bus code behavior says that basically any behavior that's reported, so it's difficult for administration to act on something they don't know about. So if they know about it,
Yep.
then they know about it following step one because it says the code of conduct shall apply. So then you come over here, step one says the adult that observed the written description has to follow the description. I can see difficulty on, my children ride the bus and they're home at 3:32. So chances are, one of the parents, either myself or my wife will be there, we'll get it. We could possibly reach the school before the school goes home, before administration goes home, but we're the first stop. So the last stop on that bus, I don't know this, I'm assuming it's a 30-minute bus ride, so now we're at...
358, yeah.
Yeah, so possibly you can't get anybody, so I could see where we might be setting this up to fail, because, unless we take steps to put in an after-service hour, which we may or may not have, I don't know. If there's a number within the district that can be called after hours that alerts the superintendent's office, and maybe these are things that we can set up. As we identify, the bus driver doesn't get back to Durham or wherever they go until 5 p.m. They're making a phone call at 5 p.m. Central office is closed, Norris is closed, possibly don't know until the morning, right? So to your point about action in the next morning, nobody within administration has been made aware of this. So to that end, do we make a dedicated phone line with an answering service that possibly rings to the superintendent's cell phone number? That being said, I honestly think that probably if somebody calls your direct number after hours, you're somehow going to get that message. Right? It either goes into your email or something. So I think there's some ways to walk through this.
And Austin, I understand your concerns, and I think the policy has to be written in such a way that you also think about the severity of the incident. So there's a difference between like a full-out brawl and, oh, cut it out. You know what I mean? Sorry.
So what if there are physical marks on the child as a
I know,
result?
I'm not getting into specifics right now. I'm just saying there's things that need to be taken into, and nor am I talking about a specific incident.
Right.
But we look at the level of seriousness. Is the person a repeat offender? What grade are they in? What's the emotional and cognitive abilities? Is there a disability? So there's various things. So she has to have enough leeway that, to use her best discretion, her and her vice principal. I understand you want everything spelled out. For this offense, you get, like at the high school level, we do that. It's a little bit more, lines are a little bit more blurred, but you're right, proper expectations are absolutely, we've got to stress that with students and bus safety. Also keep in mind, kids haven't been on the bus like for a year because of COVID. I'm not talking about the past incidents, but I'm just saying it's all a learning curve for students as well. But I think Ms. Pluta and Michelle have spoken to students about appropriate bus behavior for all students, what that looks like. And I don't think we've had any instances, but I agree. I think they laid down the law once once school has started. So I hope to God there's not any further incidents, but I think Principal Pluto would take what you said under advisement.
It just seems at this point there's no floor. So there's obviously a ceiling, but there's no floor. So it is possible, and I'm not mentioning any incident in particular, but it is possible under this policy to have a high degree of discretion in determining what a major offense includes. And so when it's determined that it's not a major offense, but in the eyes of the community it would be, I think that that's where we're open to run into.
Yeah, but wouldn't you agree that the first line of defense is the administration, right, is the principal? I mean, that's who the first, whether it's, I don't want to minimize anything, but whatever the scale is, from 1 to 100, whatever it is, that the first course of action is somehow the parents and/or the bus driver or the adult that witnesses it has to have a way to communicate that, to file that complaint, which I believe one thing I would say is we need to articulate how that is done after hours, right? Which I think only makes sense, especially as we talk about older children. So, I think of a 6th grader. If that's the youngest child in the school, the parents may work a little later. They may not be there to get that child off the bus. They may not know about till 5:30. And yes, whether you're talking about something could happen at 3:30 on the bus, and you not physically see any marks for a half hour, an hour, so again, I don't want to minimize. I'm just saying there needs to be a reporting process that we clearly, the school committee, through the administration, articulates out. These are the avenues to take. Short of that, you have to wait till tomorrow morning. You send an email, and you hope that someone's watching it in the middle of the night, right, and they see it. But, for whatever reason, maybe they're stuck at a school committee meeting for 4 hours, and they don't see it. We have to have a way to report in a timely fashion to potentially avoid the next morning issue. Because I understand what you're saying, possibly a scenario could have happened where something happened on a Wednesday afternoon and administration wasn't notified till Thursday morning, and maybe they weren't even notified until 9 a.m. So now the bus run's already happened.
Yeah.
So that's step one. Step two is or thought number 2, is that me sitting here, I don't want to sit in judgment. I don't want to second guess. We already have a role under state statute to do that. But first, it has to go to administration. Then if the parent, guardian, or the reporting party is not satisfied with that, they have a natural statutory appeal process to the superintendent. And if that is unsatisfactory, then they can appeal to the school committee. We go into executive session. And then we have a full, honest discussion with names, facts, and figures, or not figures, but all the facts on the table, versus in a public session where we have to be very protective of everyone's rights. So I know I don't know if it's a handbook, but I guess that would be my feedback on the code of conduct is should there be a paragraph
About appeals.
stating what is already laid out statutorily? It starts with the principal, and the appeal process is the superintendent. And if you're not happy with the superintendent, then it comes to us, and if you're not happy with us, then you can go to a court of law, right? I mean, it's already spelled out. We just don't, this doesn't advertise that path.
You can add those.
Yeah, and the only other thing is, and I don't know, I mean, I'd leave it to administration to figure out how we do an after-hours notification.
I think so.
That works, but we should, especially when school's in session, parents should be able to, it's almost like a anonymous tip line, but you don't want it to be anonymous. Where if you have a VoIP system at Hampshire Regional, we could have a dedicated phone number for calls after hours that gets put into a recording and emailed out to.
We have that, so.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Mrs. Lukaszewicz, I'm sorry, are you okay?
Oh, yes,
you were talking
waving
about
her.
it. If a parent calls so if you call the school and it says press 2, it says probably for Mr. Cosno right now still, because we have to figure out how to change that. It's changing the whole message, not just the one little thing.
Mhm.
It will go to Mrs. Lukasowicz's email, and several times she has called parents at 5, 6, 7 on a Friday night, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. So we are checking it goes to our email, and we are checking our email. The other thing is to think about, though, I understand and appreciate the fact that a parent would like to make that phone call at 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon that something happened to their child on the way home from the bus. Even if we know that something happened, we could possibly get in touch with the parents of the children involved to say, we would like them not to ride the bus tomorrow because we want everyone to be safe, but without due process of actually investigating what happened and then coming up with consequences, everybody has the right to still ride the bus. And I'm not saying that I believe in that 100%, but you will have the opposite end of the spectrum where I call a parent and say your child can't ride the bus, and now they feel like they've been wronged. So it comes both ways.
True.
You know what I'm saying?
True, and I understand that, but I think, again, I want to be very delicate here. I just think, if I was the parent, I know how to get a hold of you after hours, but if I didn't, right, then I think I'd rather get a hold of you and you say, you know, until we investigate this, I can't ban the other student. Okay, then I'm going to make the conscious decision to pull my child off the bus.
Right.
Until you can. You know, I think communication, it's communication, we need to document and demonstrate how to communicate after hours if there's an issue. You know, and it might be, as far as Norris goes, simply pressing number 2 or whatever that case is. I don't know if it needs to get into the handbook, but somehow, you know, in the event that if you see something, say something. So if you see something or hear something out, if you could be out of a social event and you hear a child say something and it puts other potential children at risk, we should have a process to alert.
But I do want families to know, though, I'm thinking more of a self-harm kind of a situation. And this has happened in previous districts where something's happened to a student and a friend reports or will send an email to me or a head guidance counselor like at 11 o'clock and say, oh my goodness, I'm worried my friend Jill is considering suicide. And then it's washed off it's off their plate. Administrators aren't paid to be on the clock 24 hours a day. So if it's something like life-threatening, they should call the police, because that's happened more times than I can count, where somebody has reported self-harm in the middle of the night when not necessarily, if I'm not checking email, I don't have to worry that the student's not going to be okay the next day. So I agree we can talk with administrators too about how best to handle these things, but I agree, I think communication's the best thing. That when the principal or vice principal understand that there's an issue, and like you said, John, well, I can't take the other student off the bus until due process.
Right, but
so
having that
other
conversation
person
with
would
the
know.
parent
Yeah.
or the guardian or
And I think directly to that point, and not to make part of this policy, but would administration, consider sending out a list of resources? There's hotlines and warm lines for either peer support or for, self-harming behavior. There's a crisis line. I don't think the police are usually the right people to call necessarily in a mental health emergency. There are staffed 24-hour crisis lines with clinicians who are available, and potentially making that available to parents.
I'll put that in the district newsletter. That's a great suggestion.
Just to get those resources out there for parents and older students who feel they might have a concern for one of their classmates.
Yeah, that's great.
As far as maybe setting a timeline, I don't know if there's maybe verbiage that goes into this policy of, administrators will respond to this in a timely manner on the next business day if this is after hours or within 24 hours of a filed complaint, and listing whether, you can call via phone, you can send an email. Like, these are your 2 options. Call the front desk, press option 2, or send an email too, and the email spelled out in the policy. And your response will be responded to within the next business day if this is an after hours.
respond or acknowledged
Respond or acknowledge, right.
within X amount of time, yeah.
But I agree, it's not like there's crisis lines for emergencies. They're calling your primary care provider, going to the emergency room, if, utilizing mental health and medical, first line, and then dealing with the policy with administration. We make the policy, and guide the parents on how to seek the support that they need from the administration to deal with the event, whatever happens, but right within a timely manner within one business day. But the emergency services or mental health services or medical services, those are often first line things that might need to be attended to separately.
Point of clarification.
You just have to go, any objection?
No, Jeff, no.
You just have to go to the microphone.
So this is my first meeting. I don't know if I can ask questions and get answers.
You can ask any question you want. I don't guarantee that we'll be able to answer.
So not my case in particular, just this case, I guess, in general, happening to any child, no matter how old they are, first grade or high school, or even an adult. I don't understand how behavioral health is such a huge issue right now, but yet there's never even suggested to us, or maybe never even thought of by the school, to have children with a gang mentality at this age to talk to the school adjustment counselor. How has that just gone over everyone's head? I mean, maybe if people at this age maybe were just investigated or looked into by a professional that's trained in this matter, they might not grow up to be the young gentleman that needed help that shot up Newtown. I mean, there needs to be some sort of restorative action in a mentality of a group of anyone, boys or girls, that physically attacks another human being. And I don't care how old they are. There's a huge issue, and there needs to be something written on that, because that's just leading to a society of chaos, and we're almost kind of there with these young kids and the shootings. And
So, without a lot of detail, have you had a one-on-one conversation with the superintendent?
my husband has.
Okay.
And another thing in this whole process, some things weren't brought to our attention, which I think should have, when it first went down, and they weren't brought to our attention until we had our lawyer make a phone call. So I think that should also be in the policy, that there is an option to fill out a bullying form. I didn't know about that. So I think that parents need to have their rights just as clear as administration does.
Okay.
Are there resources for bullying forms for parents to access this? Is it clear in the handbook? If you suspect bullying for your child, do
It's
X,
in the
Y, and Z?
handbook.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
But we,
However, go ahead.
right, we need to make it more readily accessible. It should be clear all over our website. It should be easy for parents to find. It shouldn't be difficult.
So, I'll give you leeway. Go ahead.
This happened over a month ago, and I'm still shaking thinking about it. Do you really think any parent in this situation, I'm going to go on the website and look for a form? It should be volunteered up. It should be, hey, you know what? I'm sorry this happened to your child. Here's our policy on what we do. Review it. Let us know if you have any questions. I don't think asking for a policy in such a simple situation that happens. You know, kids roughhouse, or they get into fights, again, at any age. Adults do. And there's nothing clearly written to help staff out or parents. That I find a little bit unnerving, knowing that I have to send my child to school again on the bus.
So, I'm going to plead ignorance on this because I do not do the annual paperwork that comes home in my household for every kid. My wife does that. But does the handbook come home annually
No,
for a sign-up? It doesn't.
No.
So it's only available via PDF?
it's on our website, and
There's
currently
no
it's,
signed acknowledgement or anything?
no.
No, okay. Which was probably
think-
done as a cost-saving measure?
I
Not to
think
issue it, sorry.
No, it's okay. At one point, we sent it home, and parents only, so if you weren't already in the school and you were coming kindergarten parents signed off that they received the handbook. I think, I'd have to check. But there hasn't, never really been a procedure for that, but that's a good idea.
Okay.
And right now, it's not on the website because we're updating it with these things, so I took it down, so that we could update it.
I think that, the other thing that I was interested in doing with a more escalated policy for the major offenses is that we got so many emails about busing and the way that parents and families value busing. If there's an incident that's determined to be a major offense and that student loses the ability to ride the bus for a few days, that's a whole family solution. The whole family has to respond, and the whole family is invested in making sure that that never happens again. So it seems like an efficient way to make sure that not only are the kids invested in creating a safe environment on the bus, but the family is also invested because they highly value that service. So I want to make sure that, because there's no teacher on the bus that can monitor this, that everyone is pulling as hard as they can to make sure that it's a safe environment for everybody.
So the code of conduct on busing references video cameras,
Yes.
but currently are there or are there not?
I'm not sure if they're on every bus. I'm not sure. You would have to ask the bus company that. We don't have anything to do with the cameras that are on the bus.
For a fact, there is not a camera on every bus. From a bus driver.
Okay. Other discussion?
The only thing
Just hold on line,
I'm thinking is, it sounds like an opportunity for educating staff and everybody as they are the first line defense for bullying, and when it's identified or reported to any staff member, that they have the training and tools to provide the resources immediately to the parents that, they know step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this, so that something doesn't fall through the cracks, because I don't think there should be any tolerance for bullying like it should be. And then, the policy, I understand it needs to have gray area because of elementary school students and different abilities, but we have to promote a safe environment, and we have to have mental health support too. I agree 100% with that. And that comes back to making sure that our schools are well funded, so that we have the ability to have adequate school adjustment counselor hours and guidance counselors to do this work that's very much needed. So those are my thoughts.
Dylan,
Yeah,
anything?
just a couple of things. So generally speaking, not to this instance, but just generally speaking, because of all the reasons Mr. Rogers raised regarding, there's no monitors on the bus, there's no teacher on the bus, you have a driver who's not only responsible for monitoring what's happening, but safely operating a very large vehicle. Is that a factor that you would consider, that those, as I don't want to say an aggravating factor, but a factor you would consider in whether determining what level of punishment would be appropriate for a given set of facts?
That there was nobody else on the bus?
That it happened on the bus versus it happened on the playground. I mean, would you view those, generally speaking, do you think you would view those two circumstances differently?
I mean, I have to take all the facts into consideration in order to determine, and what was happening outside on the playground, what was happening on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would, weigh the incident, on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, that's fair. And I think just as another, and again, I'm not saying this, I'm not looking for an amendment at this point, but how would you feel about adding under major offenses of bullet point number 5, that would, and we can play with this language a little bit, that would say something along the lines of the principal, assistant principal will make any appropriate referrals to counseling services. I think that gives you leeway to.
I think it
I don't
makes
think
sense.
it's not a shall, it's a, and if it's
So
appropriate.
it's a number 5 after
Yeah.
consequences, yep.
And then I think at that point, if the counselors felt that there was, additional outside resources needed in their clinical judgment, I would assume they would make those referrals.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, even bullies are a part of the Norris community. And so I think that we have a responsibility to make sure they're getting educated in the way that's going to make them successful. So we don't want them to go into the workplace and bully their coworkers. We don't want them to go, into the grocery store and bully the clerks. We don't want them to engage in that behavior as fully formed adults that have passed through our program. And so I think that, we need to embrace the idea behind the counseling too is, or at least the referral is that you're embracing the bully as a part of what needs to heal, not just the offended student or students, but that the bully also needs to do their own healing, and that no student is all good or all bad. Like everybody engages in a little of this or that, and we want to make sure that they know, based on the severity of the incident, that that there are causes and effects, and so their behavior can have causes down the line that make other students feel unsafe, that prevent other students from doing things, whether it's in school or in the community. They might, see them, on the baseball field and feel like, oh, I don't want to play baseball anymore because they, hurt me on the bus and got away with it. And so now I'm scared because no one cares. No one does anything when I get hurt. So no one's looking out for me. So I don't want that environment for the kids of this town. I want them to feel like we have their back, we're standing beside them, and that they're safe, especially on the bus.
I'm good.
Okay, so what I would suggest is that we table it. We let administration take all the feedback, reword this. Does any committee member want to be point person for this particular project, to be a sounding board for administration as they work through the draft for the next 4 weeks?
Yeah, I can do that.
Any objection? Okay, so, you good?
Yep.
Okay. So administration will work on the draft and just bounce it off Austin for feedback only, and take in everything, and then we'll hope to have final wording for the next meeting to approve. In the meantime, as it is, the current code of conduct will stand unedited, right? Because that's the last one approved by the school committee. So it's not like delaying this a month is resulting in no code of conduct.
Correct.
Right, okay. And then in the meantime, short, for anything else short of we can address that, and we are. We heard the feedback on the bullying and the forms and the handbook and all that. I think that's as far as the committee can go right now.
Well, we appreciate
short of
everybody's
any-
feedback.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Okay. Are we all good with that? We're going to table it? Okay, we'll leave it on the agenda for next month under old business or ongoing. Superintendent's evaluation process, goals and
Sure.
entry
And
plan.
unfortunately, Bobby texted me that she will not be able to come because the meeting ended late.
Okay.
And so she will email you guys the information that you need. I know that for Southampton, she just gave, for West Hampton, she just gave a little packet, which we'll send out to you tomorrow. It's just where we stand financially right now.
Okay,
Sure. I know in the Google folder, there are literally hundreds of pages about the superintendent's evaluation. So I have highlighted the most important things on this little piece of paper that I just handed out to you coming in. So once the 5-district working group agreement is written and everybody agrees to it, then the all-district committee would be in charge of the superintendent's evaluation. But until that time, each committee will be in charge of writing a separate evaluation for me. So these are the highlights of, and it's a little bit, it's more in-depth than the teacher's rubric, but I have a rubric online for you. But pretty much it's a 5-step cycle with self-assessment, goal setting, implementing, formative review, and then a final evaluation. And you're gonna give me ratings of exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory on 4 standards. And those standards are instructional leadership, management, family and community engagement, and professional culture. And then I will have specific 4 to 6 specific goals to me, as far as 1 for student learning, 1 for professional practice, and then 2 to 4 for district improvement goals, which I'll share with you later on. You do have to formally approve my goals. And nowhere is it written that each of those standards is weighed equally above. Usually instructional, I need to be proficient in instructional leadership to remain in this position. So that one is usually weighted more. And we'll need to, at some point later, decide on the evidence on which indicators. And on the bottom, I did identify which of the 7 or 8 indicators that are most applicable to my goals, but I can go over that in a little bit. So my evaluation would be voted on and discussed in a public session. And these are the 4 standards, and these are all the indicators and sub-indicators. So I am responsible for everything, but my goals focus on certain things. So for example, if you look to my goal sheet, this packet that I handed out, these are the goals that I'm working on. So for each one, it lists the goal, the action steps, benchmarks, and what are they related to in regards to this. So I'll be focusing on instruction, data-informed decision-making, environment, fiscal matters, family concerns, commitment to high standards, and shared vision. I had circled engagement indicator, but when I go over my entry plan, you'll see that I'll be meeting with a lot of people in my entry plan to learn more about the district, so I don't believe that I'd be able to put in all my energy into family and community and stakeholder engagement, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But my first goal here is I'm going to work with our Director of Pupil Services to look at our program needs for students with behavior needs and those who are on the autism spectrum. So we're just going to see if it would be more financially beneficial to all of the districts if we did something at a district level. So for example, instead of sending students out of district placement, which is very costly, is there a program that we could start here? Either students with, that need a therapeutic classroom or a specific autism program. And let's say if we housed it here and we needed a student from New Hingham needed it, we'd figure out transportation, but we're gonna do a cost analysis to see if it would be a better financial benefit for us to go this route instead of out-of-district placement. So that's a year-long goal that we're gonna be meeting with different groups of people, and we've already started working on that. So one of the action steps talks about BCBA and RBTs. So those are really behavioral analyst specialists, and so the RBT is really, a paraprofessional could do that. It's the hands-on supporting of the student. And so we're looking to train some of our paraprofessionals so they can do this, and we obviously pay them a little more, but instead of paying a company, $50, $60 an hour, we could pay $25 and have them employed by us. So that's my first goal. The next few goals are, this is what the state has suggested, because I'm in the NSIP program, which is the new superintendent induction program. So pretty much we meet 6 hours a month. It's all the new superintendents. And I've written an entry plan, which I'm going to discuss with you, but it really just develops my skills in strategy development, data analysis, how to use protocols. They give us assignments, and we meet 6 hours a month. So that's one of my goals. And the way it was written, and the action steps and benchmarks, the state has, that's the state's wording, not mine. Likewise, with the district improvement goal, the next one, this is the state's goal. By late spring, the district will have broad recognition of key stakeholder groups about the district's most critical needs. And then I'm going to develop a strategic plan that will address those needs and measures that will be used to assess progress. So while a benchmark is like the end product, when the M in a SMART goal is measurable, so people will say, well, geez, usually they look like for percentiles for like English and math. I'm going to increase student growth percentile by 15% in grades 3 through 4. Well, for benchmarks, it's process or outcome. So mine's mostly process driven and not specifically an outcome, like a statistical outcome. The next one as well is a DESI goal. I'll keep the district moving forward during the year's transitions. We do not have a district improvement place. We do not have a district improvement plan in place. The last one that I can find was written in 2018. So that's going to be one of the first goals that I do with the principals, is try to develop that based on their school improvement plans, just so we have specific goals that we could work towards this school year. And the last one is a goal that I'm working on with all of our administrative team, about strengthening the cohesive district culture by improving communication. We're going to increase collaborative problem solving, and we are meeting every week with the principals, and every other week with central office staff included as well. And we really are trying to do things more district-like. So like when we talk about student handbook, one of the things that we'll do in the spring is we'll look at all the handbooks in all the schools and see, make one cohesive document for all the schools, hopefully, so nothing will fall through the cracks, and we'll take the best ideas from everybody. So those are my goals, and you'll approve those in a minute. But while we're talking about that, part of this is in the book I gave you, it's called my entry plan. This is one of the first assignments from my new superintendent induction program. Let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. So it gives an overview about the entry plan, so it's pretty much very basic background information about the district. It talks about the superintendent search, how the town has a 5-district working agreement that we're working on. I compare my core values with the district's core values, and I noticed that our district mission statement probably hasn't been visited in a number of years, so that's going to be something else that we're going to do. Because core values have changed a lot in the last 10 years. People are more now like college and career readiness, like the vocational aspect of it, seal of biliteracy, like Dylan said. Those are things that we want reflected in our core values. So pre-entry activities are some of the things that I did before I was officially hired. I attended school committee meetings and annual town meetings. I met with the administrative team, the interim superintendent to review budget. I attended the professional development on racial equity. I attended a drug alcohol coalition meeting. That's just some background information. So the reason why I have this document written is really to do a complete 360-degree review of the district in a really logical, well-planned manner. And my other goals are included that I'm going to spend a lot of time listening, learning, and observing, and I really need this time to recognize the unique concerns that are relevant to each district and also us as a small rural district, and where we stand in terms of capacity for human, fiscal, instructional resources. It's a lot of background information on me. So you see a timetable which I'm going to strictly adhere to. So the first one is data collection. So I spent the summer looking at all these documents from MCAS to NEASC, reaccreditation reports, budgets, annual town reports, just to get some background information. And I'm also going to be doing interviews and observations. So I've been doing classroom observations. I will be observing how, like, Elisa leads her district her building administrative team meetings and faculty meetings. And I'm working with principals, like how they do classroom observations, so we can come up with common language about what a good teaching and learning looks like. But I'll also be interviewing stakeholders like Board of Health, Select Board members, fire, police, anybody that I can think of. So by January, end of January, February, I will have reviewed all this data, and I will share it out in March or April. And then I'm going to use all my findings and work with the administrative team to come up with a 3-year strategic plan. And I've also encouraging them, when they write their school improvement plans, to look longer term, like 2-year, not just a quick 1-year thing, because it takes a while for goals to really be properly implemented, and I don't want them to do a rush job on that. And just my concluding thoughts is just that it keeps an open dialogue between myself and all the stakeholders. My findings will really drive the district strategy plan, and it'll really help me be a more successful leader. I'll adapt my leadership style to best meet constituents' needs. And the implementation of the district strategic plan, that's a 3-year process. But the district improvement plan that we're going to work on now will probably be a 2-year commitment to that as well. So that's, and I'll give you feedback as to my accomplishments in regards to this entry plan on a regular basis. And I know that my mentor, Kevin Courtney, might attend some of our leadership team meetings, and when I meet with all the school committee chairs, he's interested in watching how we manage in those meetings. So what I do need from you guys is an approval on the goals or discussion, because you do have final say. And one of the suggestions that somebody made at the Westhampton one, which I'm going to ask about tomorrow when our group meets, is usually for a goal, you have a starting point. So even as far as like the administrative team, we're going to strengthen the cohesive district culture by improving communication. He suggested, well, geez, do you think you should have a survey to see where the starting point is for that, so you can measure how much growth there is? However, there was no communication, so for like that one, that's kind of starting at ground zero. So I am going to ask him tomorrow, because these are the state goals. I didn't change any of the language for them. So 3 of those 5 are from the state.
So part of this is, I'm sure, with the exception of Dylan, we're all involved in the contract negotiations to bring on Dr. Bonneville. We agreed to annual evaluations. We don't have the 5-district agreement, so we need a starting point. Dr. Bonneville is proposing this as a starting point. I'm in support of following this for the first year, tweak as we go along in the event that we don't reach a 5-district agreement in year 2. But I do think we have some responsibility, and a mandate and a statutory requirement to do an annual evaluation short of that. So I think that this is an excellent starting point, and we can fine tune it after we've gone through the cycle for a year, if need be, if we have major recommendations or changes. But I would be in support of entertaining a notion to approve this and adopt it for this year.
A second.
Who's making the motion?
Oh.
I would be in favor of the motion, but I can't make the
Okay,
motion.
you're not making the motion. I'll make that motion that you just
Gotcha.
moved to adopt this for the following year.
Seconded?
Second.
Discussion?
I
Go ahead.
just wanted to share, as being a part of the working group, I know that you didn't create all the language, but this was better than what I had in mind. So I appreciate it, and it makes it really clear. I think that most people reading this document would understand, or set of documents would understand where you're headed. And I think it does hit on some things that were important to us as we were looking for a superintendent, and, I hope that all the administrators feel supported by, the actions that you're trying to take, and so I'm excited, especially about, potentially being able to keep more of our students home for school in our home schools, instead of having to send them away to get the specialized services that they need.
Thanks.
Other discussion?
Yeah, just thank you for putting this together and digging and reading through all of the DESI rubrics and everything. I was feeling very overwhelmed of, oh my goodness, am I going to have to write her goals for her? And that, I've had a bit of a freak out moment, I'm not going to lie. But no, these are wonderful, and I think they're a really good starting point to establish this relationship.
Thank you. And I think the entry plan too, it really clearly lays out my goal for the year, how I'm going to progress the district forward, and who I'm going to interview when, there's deadlines, and so it's just very clear. So thank you for your support.
Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. Other business under new? Does anybody have anything? If not, I have one item. No? Okay. As Francine referenced earlier before, a new committee has been formed by the Select Board to explore the long-range future of the city, of the town of Southampton regarding its revenues, its expenses, best practices, and all that. In part, I don't remember which bullet point it is, maybe number 3 or number 4, requires that the local Norris School Committee appoint a member to that committee. That can be a member of the committee, or Norris, as its independent elected body, can appoint somebody to act in our stay. I am already on the committee in my select board capacity, so I am not able to serve. I would just point out, this is probably going to be a minimum of once a month for probably 2 years or longer, I would envision. And, this is about setting up a 5-year plan for the town, in my mind, a 5-year plan for the town of Southampton on how we're going to steer the town through all the decisions that have to be made going forward. And knowing that collectively, Hampshire Regional and Norris are about $11 to $12 million of our $19 million budget, which is 60% of the town's budget. Norris, or the local school committee, needs somebody there. As I said, I cannot fill that capacity, so we either need another committee member to step up, and my guess is these meetings are probably going to be in the evening, or we need to designate somebody from administration to serve in that capacity. And the deadline is 2 weeks from yesterday to make the selection, or we will not have a seat at the table. No pressure or anything, but is there a committee member that wants to jump on this? I didn't think so. So I would like to,
So I just.
go ahead, do you want it?
Wondering if Dylan would be interested. You seem to have a lot of knowledge for.
They want to give up Hampshire Regional, though, in
Yeah,
exchange.
that's the.
Yeah, I don't know if without getting too much into my personal life, being a married man, if I commit myself to an additional night per month without a discussion with the other member of my household, you may find me on all the committees, especially those that provide housing.
And the other member of your household is also serving the school, right?
That's correct.
In a different capacity, so. So you guys you're doing your job.
So I'm not saying no, but I'm not,
So you want to talk it over?
I-
That's
I-
fine. I'd make a motion to tentatively, I will entertain a motion to tentatively approve Dylan. In the event that he withdraws within the next 2 weeks, the committee empowers the superintendent to appoint somebody, or give us a name of somebody
I
from
don't know how you got
administration.
roped into that. That was too easy how they roped you into that one.
So moved.
Hey, there's a motion, is there a second?
A second. I just have a question if we're in
Sure.
discussion.
Discussion?
Can it be like a rotating person, or does it always have to be the same person? Can this be a
thought
shared
that too, yeah.
responsibility?
We, I think as far as this position, because it was clearly discussed at the select board that it's a position that represents this elected body, and that if this body wanted to make it somebody in administration, we could. The select board was pretty confident to leave that to the committee to decide, so we want to have consistency there. So, I mean, if a year into it, we want to switch out, knowing that, although I'm confident Dylan's going to run for election.
We can ask Allison, too.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing her name tag.
I think I know
Missed
what
that
she'll
on the
say.
fun.
So I would say, yeah, anything's possible.
Well, before we go there, before we vote on said motion, is there someone in administration who would be interested or think you would be a good candidate to serve in said role? I love how the look just keeps going to the left.
Just kind of pass down the line there.
I think it's an excellent position for the assistant vice principal.
Oh,
The newbies have to serve.
That's not a
I
bad.
think the knowledge in the background, it has to be someone who has the knowledge in the background, you know, in order to sit effectively on that committee, I was already thinking, it's not me, it's someone who understands the financials, that has been around for a long time, and, you know, and I know, I'm not suggesting anyone,
Yeah.
I don't have the information, I have to go get it, and that doesn't make sense.
I would also say, to be clear, this person is not meant to be the be and all, but they are the voice of this committee. So they go there, they speak, they have an active vote, but they should be coming back to the body, to administration, maybe having sub-meetings. Okay, this is the idea that's being floated right now, let's hash it out, pros and cons, and what position shall we take? So I would see it more as a spokesperson, but it's the spokesperson has the vote at the table. And keep in mind, I mean, I'll be there at the table for the next 3 years. So, sure. Well, I think that's what Lisa was referring to, but I also know that she is,
I'm gonna kill you.
she is
I never
very,
said Bobby. I never said Bobby.
I know. But I already want to
did
find
not
ways
say
to
Bobby.
less monopolize her time. That's why she didn't come tonight, isn't it?
I can ask her if she's interested.
So,
As if Dylan,
yeah.
I don't know if I can,
Which one of you is going to take Hampshire Regional?
They did it. I was just passing.
we can ask Allison, too.
So let's
so you need, so a name needs to be appointed prior to 2 weeks from yesterday.
right, that's the deadline. I mean, there's nothing that says we can't switch it later on.
I just don't want to lose the seat, but I know realistically, doing Hampshire Regional, doing this, doing soccer, doing baseball, doing
That's a
everything
lot.
else is.
Soccer will be over by the time we get this going.
We're gonna have basketball, and not to give too much of a preview here, but you know, we got busy stuff going on, we got a busy seasons.
Want to think about it?
I'll think about it, but
Think about it. So in the meantime, I guess, Dr. Bonneville, if you can think about an alternative in the event that we don't get somebody to step forward.
I feel like this is gonna have to be a rotating seat, and that's the best. It's so hard to serve on two different, like, extra committees in addition, so.
Okay.
I mean, realistically, do we need to have a vote for the appointment, or is that something that we can vote to give the chair or the or superintendent the authority to appoint the seat tonight, and in that way, that can be filled without.
Yeah, I like that idea. Okay, so, Dylan, so you're making a motion to empower the superintendent to make a selection in consultation with the chair of the committee, myself.
Yes, I'm making said motion.
Is there a second?
So is my motion dead?
It's gone.
Okay, second.
Discussion? None? All in favor? Aye. Next.
I'm not sure how that turned on me real quick. I'm really not sure.
Building use for SYAA and annual town meeting. I modified the agenda later. So we have two things to talk about. I added it on. So the
Right.
first issue is currently, as of this moment, North School is closed to any outside activities. We had a request from, and I forget his last name, but Patrick of the SYA, representing the SYAA. Last month, we agreed to have a decision or feedback by tonight's meeting as to whether or not they would be permitted to utilize the Norris buildings as they had done prior to COVID, specifically the cafeteria and the gymnasium. We also have a request from the select board to open Norris or make Norris available for the annual town meeting, which is scheduled to be Tuesday, December 14th, with a snow date of Wednesday, December 15th. We were also informed by our moderator that we have a we have a legal right to demand the use of Hampshire Regional, even though it's outside the jurisdiction of the town. So that would be our alternate location in the event that Norris says no to the citizens of Southampton. I will just point out for reference how the override vote went, but you don't have to hold that into.
Do not insinuate
I know.
anything and look at me.
So let's start with SYAA.
So unfortunately, well, do you have the paper I shared with you by any chance when we met? Not any of the other committee members, but just John? Because I
I
can't
did
get
not
to
bring that with
the
me.
document without internet. It was just notes, right?
Right, with conditions and.
Right. I might have it, I might not. I have it on my, I can't even access it on my phone right now. Because there's no internet. I can't get to my dock.
Okay.
But
Can we try and do it by memory? I believe there,
I can do it
the cafeteria was out of bounds.
right, we wanted, I believe, activities to begin at 5 o'clock, no earlier than 5, in the gym. SYAA to store the furniture that's in the gym now. We've weeded through a lot of it already. No access to the cafeteria, unfortunately, because everything's numbered and there's assigned seating and it would be too much. We would go by all MIAA rules that would come out for basketball, for inside.
Participants only, no guest, except for the coaches, right? Coaches and participants.
We didn't say anything about that. We said MIAA
Oh, all
rules,
right,
so.
okay.
Masks need to be worn if, that's the rule. No food or drink, pay the custodian as usual. And then I know you're also gonna talk about Suburban, but we were not in favor of having the Suburban teams play at Norris because it's bringing teams from across the state into the building. So we would like to extend the invitation to SYAA if the school committee approves, because they are mostly students at Norris. We know there are a few from the rest of Hampshire Regional, but that basically was it. I don't know if anyone else has.
Are you with SYAA?
Yeah.
If you want to just identify yourself.
So Kelly J. Ross, girls basketball, SYAA. I think the two other things were just obviously the usual cleaning before and after, and following the school use policy, I think was the other thing. So, so thank you, we appreciate that. MIAA and the Mass Executive Energy Environmental Affairs does currently allow for spectators for children under the age of 19. We haven't had an opportunity to go into the gym to measure to see how that works yet, so we're not necessarily committed on that. We would love to encourage suburban play because it really helps our children grow and develop in the area of basketball, and would really put our program behind them, and also encourage people to go to other communities to play. For suburban, we would like you to consider us allowing us to have suburban, but in that case, we would not allow spectators, to minimize the number of people entering and exiting school, restricting it to the children only.
So on the first part, you're comfortable if we say follow MIAA guidelines, and then at any point in time between now and the end of your season, they changed their guidelines.
Yeah, so MIAA and Mass Executive Energy Environmental Affairs are kind of partnered together. They create the rules. MIAA is for high school level.
Okay.
And Hampshire Regional has asked us, because we may be using their school as well, has asked us to follow both regulations. So we will keep our eye on those. There's no final regulations out yet from this season. The last regulations were for that weird late winter season that they had last year for basketball. So we will follow those regulations and the mask mandate, of course, whatever develops over the season.
What kind of time commitment for Suburban is that?
Well, we pretty much take the gym from November to March, 7 days a week. Suburban,
Did you say 7 days a week?
pretty much, yeah. For all levels, for rec and suburban. We have about 20 teams going typically. Now this year we expect it to maybe be a little bit less. So we have, suburban is usually we have 4 suburban teams, and they usually have 2 practices a week each team. And they typically have a game or 2 a week. Some are home, some are away. So it depends on what the week looks like. But we determine that. We determine how many games or use we can have a week.
How broad is suburban? I mean, I know what that means in my head, but I mean, what are
We don't
talking?
really know this year yet.
Okay.
I think everyone is kind of dealing with what we're dealing with. So typically by now, we've already met. We know suburban's happening and what teams are participating. But several districts are in the same situation that we are. And so the season will start much later than a November start for suburban until things are decided.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the high school has already ruled out suburban?
So the high school, we do suburban, SYAA does. Oh, yes,
Yeah, but
correct.
Permitted in the facility?
Yes, yeah.
So would that, if we were to grant it, does that mean moving what would have happened at the high school down to Norris? And
We've never used the high school in the past. We were just hoping, because the time shifted to 5 o'clock, it made us a little concerned about the number of practices. So we reached out to Mr. Kelly to see if we can get some additional time to allow for enough practices and space. So he had asked, he was agreeable to rec games up there possibly, but right now we don't have a consistent schedule with them, and we need a consistent schedule in order to book games and things like that. So games will probably at this juncture primarily be at Norris, and us using Hampshire Regional for practices.
The notes are on the top.
gotcha.
I do have a hesitation with suburban. I mean, because we really racked our brains with, the local rec league, because we recognize that it's mostly Norris kids and we want to see them benefited. But when we met with Board of Health last month, we were told, go slow. And to be honest, to me, it seems like a big jump to go from, and then I know you're just advocating for the schools, but I have a little hesitancy with suburban just because we're bringing in more outside people that aren't part of our immediate Hampshire Regional community. Like if suburban was just that, I would feel differently, but considering suburban, like Eliza said, is from all over the state, I do hesitate, and it's kind of goes against Board of Health recommendation when I don't think they were even loving the idea of opening it to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year Hampshire Regional did allow, inter-school competition, so there were other schools going up for basketball and other late, whatever that weird season was. There were no spectators until the MIAA released the regulations, which I think was the last few games where they could have 2 spectators. So Hampshire Regional successfully had winter sports, allowing schools from other districts to come in. So you're talking about 12 or 13, maybe 15 at most people coming.
You check with the high school tomorrow, because when I spoke with the principal a few weeks ago, suburban came up because they can't use your cafeteria. So did somebody from your organization reach?
I've been talking to Mr. Kelly.
I've been talking to Mrs. Holt, so.
Yeah, and I think Patrick has been talking to Mrs. Holtz, because he coached her son in soccer or daughter or whatever, but Mr. Kelly said that right now he can't commit to giving us, regular times, so that we're just going to get the overflow, which we're prepared to use whenever we get that. So we wouldn't be using the regional probably for games anyway, just because their sports come first, because they're hoping to have wrestling and basketball and all the winter sports up there and have inter-school play.
Could you utilize the regional for what would have happened in the cafeteria at Norris? Or no?
If we have enough we're going to maximize as many spots as we can. We're going to have to, with 20 teams and only 15 time slots a week during the week. So that's a little different than what we've had in the past. So we're hoping to get as much time as we can from the regional, and we'll use it. But we'll also have to incorporate more Saturday and Sunday times, which are typically just for games, but they're going to have to be used for practices in order to give everyone one practice a week, or the 2 for suburban if we have suburban.
Okay. Other questions?
What grade level is suburban?
Suburban is 5, 6, and 7, 8 for boys and girls.
I know this was kind of already asked, but in a typical year, or looking at suburban, what communities would you be playing?
Chicopee, Ludlow, East Longmeadow, Longmeadow, so Western Mass mainly.
And does suburban draw its team from any other community other than Southampton, or the regional community?
It's the regional community only. Yeah, we're bound by similar to like Little League. We can only have kids within our district, so our kids can't go actually play in Westfield. They'll have to play at a different program.
I'm not sure I'm understanding the reason why against suburban. If the local league is, you have kids that aren't in the same class, you have kids that are maybe not even in the same school, it might be a Southampton student, or it might be someone who just lives in Southampton, can still play. So at the 5th and 6th grade level and 7th and 8th grade level, I think, I'm in favor of suburban, because I'm not seeing a big difference in risk compared to just keeping the kids from Norris together and only doing in-town. I think because the older kids now, they've lost a lot of the experience of playing against other towns in travel league, and as being a former athlete who did this sort of thing, it was a big part, and I think they've lost a lot. I don't know, I'm not seeing the big risk increase in going to other towns, because it's all still within the state, it's still within the same geographic area. It's not like we're going to another state to play that has drastic levels of COVID transmission. I think it's still relatively the same region. I'm just trying to picture in my head why would be hesitation to look at suburban as a different risk category than the risk associated with play at the local level.
Awesome. No? Could you just, so I have it straight in my mind, if we only did SYAA, non-suburban, and you only have the cafeteria,
We only have the gym,
I'm sorry, you only have the gym, how often would you utilize the gym?
7 days a week.
50, so could you even add suburban? Are you already maxing out?
With Saturdays and Sundays, we'll have to use, so before we wouldn't use Sunday mornings maybe for the gym, or Sunday nights, but it's going to have to be used in order to give everyone, the slots that they need for practice, whether it's rec or suburban. Either way, we're going to have to increase our practice slots.
Is there a difference in the calendar start time between SYAA and when suburban would start?
Not typically, but there will be this year. So we would like to open registration tomorrow morning if we get approved, and
For which one?
rec and suburban registration. And then once suburban's decided and finalized, then we will go go forward. Typically, Suburban's already planned, but because other districts are doing what we're having to do, they're not meeting till the end of this month to kind of come up with a plan. So they'll probably start, usually they start in November. They probably won't start till December or January, Suburban. They'll still have to be over in March.
Okay.
But I don't know, we don't know the answer to that yet.
Is it possible, I mean, I don't want to put you in the spot and speak for your whole group, but if we were, I don't know where we're going with this, but if we were to permit the Suburban, could we have a SYA rec starts and then at least a 2-week window to make sure that everything's running smoothly before all of a sudden we open to outside the communities?
Oh, well, Suburban games won't start for a while. They won't start until December, January. The only thing that we would have in the month of November at Norris would be all the kids doing evaluations and practices.
There's a 4 to 6 week period of time.
Yeah, there will be at least a 4 to 6 week period of time before.
Not that we would, but if
Yeah.
all of a sudden there was a sudden spike and all that, we can just shut everything.
We would shut it all down, yeah.
You want to comment, Elisa, or weigh in?
No, I thought it was, I'm fine with whatever you decide. I just thought that there was a comment earlier or previously about the numbers
Yep.
of COVID cases in these other communities that we would be playing against for Suburban, and whether it would make sense to have other communities around us that have higher numbers coming into the school. But if you feel that the number, if it's not that risky, then I have no reason to
We're in
say.
this environment that COVID's not gonna go away, so we're in this transitional period of learning to live with it, and how long are we gonna not allow this opportunity for the kids? I think we just have to make the adjustments to do it safely, so it looks different than it did previously. Wash hands more, have hand sanitizer, masks when you're not on the court. These are the different MIA rules that have been imposed.
More storage units.
Yeah, more storage units. Yeah, it's just.
Okay, so what we have here is terms and conditions, I guess, is the SYA will may have use of the gym for basketball for the following conditions, Monday through Friday, beginning at 5 p.m. We'll come back to the weekends. Absolutely no food or drinks allowed in the gym except for water for the players and coaches. SYA will pay for storage of furniture currently being stored in the gym. On premise or off premise, or does that not matter?
I think we're thinking on premise.
On premise, yeah, we'll get a storage container.
And SYAA will follow school mandates for spectator masking, and MIAA and the Mass Executive
Of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
Energy and Environmental Affairs, which just seems odd to me.
It is
Rules
odd.
for indoor sports for players. The SYA will pay custodial fees for weekends, so,
Which they did before.
okay, so unrestricted access on the weekends or limited to first and second shift only? Start time to end
I
time?
mean, and it should all be subject to finding a custodian, right? I mean, I'm not sure if my custodians we would have to post something for time on the weekends. Can we work around pickleball?
Right.
Francine's like, where are we gonna play pickleball?
SYI is agreeable to clean the gym floor and leave it in a condition as it was found or better.
Yes.
Spot check the restrooms for issues and will follow all other rules and regulations concerning the use of school building as outlined in policy KF, otherwise known as building use.
I mean, how late would you go on Saturday, Sunday evening, would you think?
I would probably say 8 would probably be the latest.
Finish at 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
So can we say we'll permit the gymnasium to be used subject to staffing between the hours of 9 and 9? I mean, if they close at 8, that gives the custodian 30 minutes to do whatever before they have to be off property. Does that sound
What,
good?
I'm sorry, what'd you say? 9?
To 9 p.m. Saturday, Sunday? But the custodian needs to be locking the door by 9 p.m. So if you're
Well,
done
we
at 8,
lock it.
that gives
We
him-
open it and lock it.
Right.
We don't, the custodian doesn't lock it.
Right.
So, and we make sure, I mean, in the past, we've made sure it's clean with the custodian only having to do
Right.
minimal cleaning on the weekends.
Right, but I guess my point, and maybe it's a moot point, but my point would be, if you're gonna end at 8 and we're saying the custodian's at 9, you know, whether it's 8:30 or whatever, I don't want you ending at 9, the custodian has to stay till 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Oh,
You know
no.
what I mean?
Yep.
I don't have any objections to those. Good, administration, good. So Suburban. I'm looking to you because I figured you'd be on the other side of this argument, but are you good with it?
With athletics, I'm good as long as we're putting in safety. Like, Stephanie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I hear, and there's a little piece of me that is like, ooh, are we going to bring these communities that maybe have higher rates of transmission into the school? But at the same time, like, the mental health benefits that these kids will get and the physical activity.
Exactly.
I think all of us as adults are feeling it, like, how long can you go on like this? And, our kids need some sense of normalcy and a chance to be a kid, so I am kind of swaying that way now.
It's not like we're inviting Florida teams to come here. This is our geographic location, not to name a state, but this is local. The communities aren't that far away, right? So
Suburban basketball to be permitted as long as the teams are from Massachusetts. Don't go to infield.
No, we didn't play Enfield last year.
Oh, Francine. Yes, go ahead, Francine.
Just as an observation, I know you're able to make the decision all on your own autonomously, but is there any consideration looking for guidance from the Board of Health in Southampton? Having them join in with you in making this decision, or creating the threshold, let's say, because you're talking about other towns coming in who may or may not have higher rates of incidence, and looking at it, the potential exposures. I mean, just as opposed to you making your decision by yourself, making it in concert with them. It's your decision. I'm just asking if that would be a consideration.
They were initially
You're absolutely right. No, they were, but we did not. Yes, there was a preliminary discussion with the Board of Health. But to that point, I mean, again, there's no motion before us right now, but I mean, I would suspect that we're probably we are okay approving these recommendations for the SYAA Rec League. Are we okay approving the same for Suburban? And then I'm happy to say, here's the vote that we took, and we send it to the Board of Health in the event that we're missing some protective measure that they want to take or instill, and send it off as a communication for them to write back. I hear what Francine's saying, and we definitely need to make them aware of what we're doing. At the same time, we can make them aware and say, hey, here's all the conditions we put in place. We feel comfortable doing this. Here's the reasons why, which will be reflected in the minutes. Are we missing anything that you would like us to consider? Give it to us, but we're, no, yes?
yeah, it's all great.
And I think we just add the provisional caveat of the no spectators currently for Suburban. I know that's not currently, right now it's MIA guidelines for rec. I think if we do Suburban, I think at the recommendation of SYA that we would limit or currently not allow spectators for Suburban games.
Okay.
I think that was that not that was the recommendation of SYA, okay.
Ms. Barkham?
I know baseball is completely different because it's outside, but the Board of Health, AKA Geraldine Swanson, was perfectly fine with us. We could do whatever we wanted as long as we followed the emergency affairs of whatever that board was. So as I would assume that it's okay with that board, it would be okay with the Board of Health, because that's what they did as far as baseball is concerned.
Thank you. And you're probably right. I would just like that in writing from them, just so that we have it as part of the record. But, so there's a motion made by Julianne, seconded by Austin, amended by Dylan to add the caveat that at the current stage, we are not permitting spectators for suburban
games.
suburban games slash practices, or just games? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Because you guys did talk about live streaming. Right, so the adults and guardians could be in the parking lot, still participate, okay. You made the motion, Juliana, you're comfortable with the amendment?
Yes.
So as amended, other discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So, we need to take that language, tweak the adjustments we did, and
Which
then,
are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, and no spectators for games or practices for suburban.
until approved by the committee. And then we share that with the Board of Health and ask them if there are any other restrictions that we should be placing that we didn't consider. Okay?
Are you guys gonna let us know if there are other restrictions?
Yes.
How will that be communicated?
Right now you have approval. I mean, unless they come back and say something, which then means we'd have to have an emergency meeting to reverse or reconsider our decision. But to be safe, today is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so I'd say Board of Health is closed on Friday, Monday, by close of business on Monday. And we,
So we'll open registration, but we won't go forward with anything else. That way we at least have things going. So it'll stay in district until we hear otherwise.
yeah, SYAA is good to go. It's more on the suburban stuff that we would possibly have a question.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next, mandatory vaccination testing for staff policy, second reading and, I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, town meeting, thank you. You're getting
Sorry.
away with it, huh? Yes. I don't understand.
You said you can take Hampshire for town meeting, but you can't tell Norris.
No, so the Norris building is controlled by the local school committee. The local school committee does not control Hampshire Regional, but per the 66 agreement, that spells out the right for the town, the select board, to request the services of Hampshire Regional and bypass this committee. Yeah, it's very complicated. All you need to know is we pay 56 cents on the dollar for Hampshire Regional. And we had 11% of the vote. But that's a sidetrack. Sidetrack. Representation without taxation.
Every meeting, I was waiting for it.
So, okay, town meeting.
Town meeting.
So this was discussed last night with the town moderator due to a series of events, and there is a requirement of a specific grant that requires adoption by the town meeting prior to December 31st, which is requiring the town meeting to happen in December or by the end of the year. So thoughts from administration on opening, I'm assuming the gym, knowing that our quorum has been limited, reduced to 50 people, although we may have 6,721 if everyone shows up.
So what do you mean by limited then? What does that mean?
Well, we have to have at least 50 residents present to
Oh,
meet
to have
quorum to
quorum
hold the
to vote.
meeting.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Okay.
that'll be our floor. Our ceiling is if everybody in town shows up. Generally, we have between 100 and 200 people at annual town meetings. Special town meetings, I think we're probably around 7,500 people. But, do you want the issue, or do you want us just to punt it to Hampshire Regional? Madam Superintendent?
Trying to think of the logistics of your gym. I think we can do that here. You're thinking roughly 75 people, right?
I'd say 75 to 100. It's normally in the gymnasium. We can set up the chairs with, like here, and maybe, I mean, if we wanted to, we could pull out the middle row chair, empty space chair, you know, kind of stagger it.
Would spacing be easier at the high school in the auditorium?
Here, so I would say yes, but here's the issue. It's 7 PM in the middle of December. The concern is asking residents to exit the town boundaries go to Westhampton for a 7 PM meeting that will generally go till 9:30.
No, I get it.
Right, no, it makes sense to have it at Norris, and I feel like if we can do the, I don't know the technology piece of what happens in the cafeteria to make it happen, but if we can make that happen in the gym, I think we can make it happen in the gym. So I don't know what Spectrum comes and sets up prior to the meeting. Is it just microphones? Are we live streaming? What is,
So yes, but that's, so we should, I wish we brought this up first, so we need to let SYAA know.
and right, and
Those
SYAA
nights.
wouldn't have access on those,
Yeah.
well, it wouldn't be the 14th and then the rain date of the 15th, right?
It's December, it's the blizzard day.
December. Right.
Yep.
I mean, when they fill out the paperwork to reserve the space, I would just say you can't use, the same thing I do every year when there's a town
During
meeting.
the blackouts.
Right, the blackout day. But
So
the
I'm.
question is the technology. I mean,
Correct, well, that I would put back on the town, because we only have, yes, you can use the school, you can use the gymnasium, and then leave it to the town moderator and his group to figure out what they need to do, and I guess the moderator and the clerk. Our sole question is, are we gonna open up the school facility for a town event? I have no reason to object to it. Did any other committee member want to not do this?
No, but then I wonder if it opens up things like, should we be having parent-teacher conferences in person? And those questions are gonna arise. But, yeah, I think there's nowhere else to have it.
Mhm. I agree within the boundaries of the town, so we're going to, we have two options. Well, one is, before us is a town meeting, so we would need a motion to approve the use of the gymnasium, subject to all Board of Health guidance for an indoor event on those dates, 7 PM to 10 PM. And that's option one. Option two is we are the only school that remains closed within the district. All other schools within the district are open. We also have the largest population outside of Hampshire Regional, so we could just do away with this whole thing and just put it all back on administration going forward and not make it a school committee issue.
Is that what the other towns have done?
Right, but I mean, Williamsburg is what, 120 students, and Westhampton is 75 students. But
I'm not opposed to doing that eventually. I think before, maybe we make it an agenda item for next meeting, because I would like to hear from administration, and I don't want to put them on the spot tonight of exactly what open to business would mean for actual usage, and comparing that. I don't know if anti-Dunphy is getting used in the same degree when open to the public as Norris is. So I don't really feel comfortable doing that tonight.
And I'm happy to defer it. I think just for your reference, some of the issues are is if we open, then traditionally pre-COVID, relatives, i.e. grandparents, were able to come have lunch with their kindergarten grandchild in the cafeteria. And the cafeteria has arranged that we just can't, under our current guidelines, allow that to happen. So I think there is room to expand or release some of the restrictions, but I think we just can't put the doors wide open. So I'm happy to delay that conversation on that end. So is there a motion to open the gym on December 14th with a snow date of December 15th, 7 PM to 10 PM for the purposes of special town meeting for the residents of Southampton?
can you say gym or cafeteria? And maybe we can make that work.
Gym or cafeteria at the discretion of the administration,
So moved.
assuming you can't have it in the parking lot.
Right.
There's a motion made. Is there a second?
Second, provided that the town
Discussion.
moderator is nice to our residents during a town meeting. You were real mean last time, I don't know. what
You're out of order. That's a personal attack.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now, mandatory vaccination testing, staff policy, second reading, and potential vote. Procedural-wise, any policy that comes before the select board, before the school committee has to have 3 readings. May have up to 3 readings. It has to have 1 reading. In the second reading, which is what is before us tonight, we could motion to waive the 3rd reading and enact the policy tonight, or we could give feedback and delay it to the 3rd reading for modification and/or withdraw the order. So procedurally, those are our options. Everybody should have a copy from our last meeting. I don't think there's been substantive changes, but I might be wrong.
Well, I'll just review real quick and tell you where the other, you can fill us in on Westhampton. So currently, in the district, there are 13 unvaccinated individuals, and at Norris, there's 5 of them, 3 paras, a substitute, and a custodian. So just know that going in. So this pretty much says that it's required that everybody is vaccinated, or if they have a religious or medical exemption, they would provide weekly proof of a negative PCR test. And those results would be sent to me every week. On this document, I listed November 1st, but you can pick whatever day you want. And if a person's results weren't in by Monday morning, they would have to take a sick day or vacation day. It's funny, somebody already sent it to me on Sunday, and I don't know what school they work with, but I was very impressed that they were taking a preemptive strike. So the liability waiver is our attorney had suggested this, and she had actually suggested this for all employees, which I thought was not appropriate for us since the vast majority were vaccinated last year. So I wrote, going forward, anybody who's vaccinated at this point would have to fill out that liability waiver form. And I used the vaccination exemption form that I got from the state, from Dylan, so thank you, where they would have to provide medical documentation or describe the religious principles that guide their objection. And that's pretty much the policy. So all the unions are very much in favor of this. So when we started this policy, we started discussions back in July, right, when I was hired. And all the school committees wanted this. And at that time, we didn't know how many people were vaccinated. So we're clearly over 90, 93, I think 96% for the district. So keep that in mind. So the way I see it is you have three things to think about. Well, first off, let's see, I can't remember, what did the high school do? Was that only first read? Okay, first read at the high school. At Chesterfield Goshen, they're not doing anything because they're 100% vaccinated. We might at some point later discuss as a future employment clause, but we just didn't get there that night. And what happened at Westhampton tonight?
Westhampton, remember, they approved with a little bit of change of the language about
Oh,
the
yeah.
boosters.
Including but not limited to boosters. But I let Westhampton know, we can't monitor who has a booster shot. This was hard enough to get from 400 people who was vaccinated on what day and proof of that. So booster shots, I don't know where people stand on that, but monitoring that is gonna be a nightmare. So you can accept this policy, do nothing, leave things the way they are, or you can make it a condition of future employment, this policy would then be effect that if they're not vaccinated, they would need a medical or religious exemption.
Just clarification, so on that third option, a condition of future employment, do you believe that that would not be subject to collective bargaining because the unions have already indicated?
The unions are all in support of this, so that would be, a school committee would just have to approve that, and I don't think there would be any problems. The unions were all in support of this.
Discussion?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I know substitutes aren't covered by a union, are paras and custodians covered by a union?
Yes, sir.
If you can't answer this question because of privacy concerns, I fully appreciate that, but do you have any inkling or sense if any of these 5 would qualify for a exemption?
Yeah, I know the names, but I don't know them as human beings, so I honestly don't know. You,
I don't know.
Okay, no, that's fair.
I don't even,
I mean, you see where I'm going with that, I assume?
yeah,
Okay.
I do.
And I take it we're having a hard time finding custodians to begin with? Is that the impression I got from an earlier conversation?
Other discussion?
So just to clarify, so another district, or one of the districts made this a policy that applies to future employment, but sort of grandfathers in who's ever already working for the district?
Because they're already at 100%.
Because they're already at 100%, okay.
We're at 95.
wait, what did West Hampton do? I already forgot what you said.
West Hampton, they approved.
Okay, they approved it.
Okay. What's their numbers look like in West Hampton?
They had
They had
three
three.
unvaccinated.
Okay.
Right, but Auntie Dunphy, they put it on hold, and we'll have the conversation about future employment at a later date.
Okay.
Because they were at 100%.
I would like to hear, maybe what are the arguments for and against the policy?
From who? Us?
Well, it seems like the administration's in favor of the policy. Why do you favor the policy?
I was surprised how in favor the unions were of this policy. I did not see that coming, because first, as Dylan knows, I was really advocating for personal beliefs to be in here, and the unions were pretty clear they wanted the policy as is written, and I think it also sends a strong message to parents that we do support vaccinations, and that when the time comes when students are eligible to be vaccinated, it just shows the school's position that we would support that. On the con side, you're really doing this for 5 people. It's really not an issue right now. It was an issue in July.
Right, so that's where I have the issue. So I think the fact that we're at 94.5% already, we have the 5 people, as Dylan indicated, 4 of them are under collective bargaining agreements, 1 is not, the substitute. I don't know names or positions, but 4 of them would be covered by this. 90 people, somebody must have a legitimate exemption as this is, so we'd never get to the 100%. And my fear is that approving this sets the stage to then just roll this out and mandate it to the children. And my issue with that is, I'm okay making it a condition of employment. It happens everywhere else. You want to work here, here's the rules and regulations, and you grandfather the existing, and marching forward, this is the way it is. You know that, eyes wide open, you're an adult, you're over 18, you make your decision. I think when it comes to the kids, parents are all over the spectrum. So I would be hesitant without adding a paragraph in here that says that approving this in no way, shape, or form means that we are going to automatically mandate this for kids as we do for the measles, mumps, and rubella. That's my con
Right,
against
that
this.
would come from the state. I would never propose that, period.
Right, well, so
This is
right
for
now.
personnel.
Yep, this is for personnel, and right now, outside, from the state, outside of the executive branch, there is no mandate, right? So I'm torn on this, I really am. I get it, I think adults should just be adults. They make their decision, 94.5 decide to get it, 5% didn't. Okay, I don't want to know who they are, the personal, I'm gonna go a step further here. I may lose supporters, but I also think that because it's Norris, just wear the mask. That's it. I know you recommended to the end of December, but it's like, listen, wearing a mask versus taking the shot, I don't know, but
Another worry, though, is with the custodians. I don't know, like I said, I don't know them, but what if it's a personal belief and, I'm not gonna lie and pretend that I have a religious exemption.
Yeah.
Are we ready for somebody to lose their job? I'm not. I don't like that part.
Right.
I just, I like the vaccines. I think they're, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
They're important, and I think there's always been benchmarks we've been looking to get to. And the benchmarks that I think were set from us, they said when the vaccine comes out, we need to hit 80%. If we hit 80% nationwide, we're golden. We're good. And the fact that we're at 95% here, I don't know if it's worth losing a valued member of staff because that's just kind of where I'm at. I don't know, to set a policy that does, I hear your point, John. We set a lot of policies and procedures for staff that don't apply to kids and vice versa. And I think that it's clear and understood that we're not going to be issuing a local mandate for students to get vaccinated.
I mean, I'm shocked that we're hearing arguments for and against vaccinating students because none of us have ever mentioned that, like a mandate for students.
I'm not saying the committee, I'm just saying.
No, but I'm saying in general, I'm
how this
surprised that
goes.
so many people jump to the slippery slope, because that's kind of foolish at this point.
Well, I think our president got us there.
We can argue about that,
but yeah,
but I
go
think
ahead.
in a
Let's be fair.
polarized political environment where vaccines are politicized instead of being science, I think that's why we're hearing that argument. But if we step back and look at what the committee has done and acted upon, we've never even brought up the discussion about a mandate for children other than masks.
I agree 100%.
Yep.
I agree 100%. The fact that the history of the past 18 to 24 months, the fact that without a single objection, the union signed off on this, is that this is the arsenal going against the pending case already before the body. It's the next logical step from that group. So I don't see the need to do it. And just, we're at 95. I mean, what are we looking to achieve? One more, two more? What's our number? If we were sitting at 50 or if we didn't know, okay, but we know, the facts are the facts. And again, I'll clarify, I'm comfortable making this a condition of employment going forward. A future adult comes in, I mean, I would even go further and say, because I go the other side, you get the flu shot, but make it a condition of employment, and if you want the job, this is what it is going in. I do not believe, I would be hard pressed for anybody to lose their job over this. Right, so I think we're talking about the minority. I think that whether this is good, bad, or indifferent, us to approve this is a ceremonial vote at this point because we're already at the 95.
Right.
That's just, and we can cross the bridge when the FDA does whatever it does down the road with the vaccines, and we can look at it with a fresh set of eyes.
Right, you can table this and do nothing. I brought this forward because the school committees asked for it back in July.
Right.
So, I mean, things have changed since July, so don't feel pressured one way or another.
From administration or the audit? No. You weren't here for the first
High
week.
school, I was surprised because the high school union was so,
Yeah.
I said, why go forward? We're already at such a high rate. And they're like, no, we really want this. in
And I get it,
place."
from their side of view, they're looking at their peers, and there's a comfort level, and that's fine, but, at one point in time, I was a card-carrying union member of 404, so I get that side of it. They're interested, and they should be, in their membership. We should be interested in the 6,761 residents of Southampton, and that's much bigger.
I do wish we had,
It's valid, I promise.
can I speak? I haven't had a chance to
Go
speak,
ahead,
and I am
Julianne.
actually a
And
school
then
committee
we will.
member, but thank you, you can speak right after. I'm proud of the staff and the teachers to have gotten to this percentage. That's great, amazing. I wish that we had people the paras who have direct one-to-one or direct contact with students who are unvaccinated. I really wish those ones were vaccinated, but I agree that I don't think we need to push to 100 if we're at 95, 96%. But I would still like to encourage the culture of vaccination and safety and make it really clear that we really strongly want you to be vaccinated, especially if you're within close proximity to a student because of just the risk. And I think we're moving forward, we're continuing with our masks. Anyone who's unvaccinated and chooses to be unvaccinated, I think we have to encourage masks until something changes within our numbers and the pandemic shifts down and something happens and we can get rid of these masks, you know, but I think.
Which just, by the way, mask is the next item on the agenda.
Right, yeah. So I think we have to really show appreciation for everybody getting to nearly 100%, but it's so, the second point also, or maybe the third, is that it's so hard to find people to be working and to work as a para. I'm not sure, I would be afraid of trying to find those staff to replace too, right? And so is that a huge disservice to the students if now we're short 5 more people potentially? So I think we applaud the staff. We encourage to still continue to have the conversations with those who are unvaccinated to reconsider. Now that it's all FDA approved, Pfizer's FDA approved, and like, just think about it. But yeah, I think we have to just.
And I have no problem with an educational campaign. But again, because at the end of the day, it's the adult making a conscious decision one way or the other. We can provide as much information and continue to add it, but yeah.
And then future employment, I think we encourage people to be vaccinated coming in.
So you both wanted to say something, so as long as it's, go ahead.
It is very respectful, I promise, and it's not one way or the other. The only thing I have to say is please don't table it, make a decision, because these poor people think their jobs are on the line, and you don't want to leave them hanging with that stress for God knows how long. So that's just, make a decision, please.
Are you good, Jennifer?
Yeah, do you check the vaccination records for any other vaccinations for teachers' employment prior to this vaccine? Just out of question. And are you still going to require those teachers that don't get vaccinated, in the Norse specifically, because technically everyone in the population of students can't be vaccinated yet, I think. Are you still going to single out those 5 people who didn't get vaccinated and make them wear KN95 masks versus whatever else they normally would wear, is just my concern. Because again, it's just pointing them towards discrimination, and you're pointing out the people that didn't get vaccinated.
And I think to your first question, I believe we only validate vaccination records for pupils. Right.
The only,
Just people,
yes, the
pupils.
only proof we ask for is from students required for entry. For staff,
Yeah.
for staff, we do ask, just on like their staff emergency forms, if they've had varicella, MMR, and most recent Tdap, but it's just like a yes, no, if they know a date. We don't actually require the proof, like we did require the proof for the COVID vaccination. And it's really more as like if we were to have an outbreak in the school, we can kind of quick reference, like, who do we need to connect with first?
So my question goes to, if kids are not the most vulnerable population and all but 5 of their staff are vaccinated, why do further employment people need to be vaccinated if the children are not the ones that need to be protected per se? And if they're an adult, they can make the choice of what they want to do. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. That seems like never before have you required proof of vaccination to have a job.
No,
And now
right,
you're gonna
so
say,
not,
if you're already having shortages, I can't say that this will help.
I understand that, and just from my private sector point, you know, as somebody who oversees an HR department, I've never let that last argument be, well, we can't find anybody to hire, so we're not going to fire for an inadequate position. So that's me. But we do require queries, and there are certain requirements of staffing, conditions of employment. The thought process was to follow Chesterfield Goshen's process of consider it for, well, they made it a condition of future employment. That's not before us right now. It was a suggestion for consideration or to think about. And I would say, much like the Corey check, I'm open to talking about it. But as far as tonight goes, it's so odd on this side, but are we okay to leave this, give this leave to withdraw as is and not pass anything? Which basically kills it, unless somebody brings it up at a future meeting, versus tabling it.
I was told to lead, not follow, so I don't know.
I think as of right now, we have 96%, 96?
I think it's 94.5.
Yeah. 95.
Still an A.
It's still an A, you're right, it's still an A. If you do that, well, I don't know how not on our current report cards, that's a separate thing.
Right, it's meeting, exceeding.
But, I think right now we can,
You would leave to withdraw?
I think so. Unless something changes, like we can't predict the future, we
So
don't
that-
know what
so
will
that-
happen.
That's the caveat,
Yeah.
right? 2 weeks, a month from now, when we have a meeting, if everything's going in the opposite direction, 100-fold, then much like the past 18 months, everything comes back on the table. But, I do think, I don't want to leave anything sitting on the table, just tabled month after month after month. If the committee's comfortable giving it leave to withdraw for now, then
Just procedural, I just want to clarify, just for the record. West Hampton is making it a condition of future employment. New Hingham.
Wait, I
or
have to
no,
think for a
so
second,
can we
hold on a
just- I just
second.
want to make sure we get this correct.
What did West Hampton,
I
I'm
think-
sorry, I know you told me this 3 times.
All they did was change the booster language.
And they adopted
approve- Yes,
And they adopted it.
yes.
Okay. At New Hingham, they're not doing anything. They briefly talked about perhaps as future employment, but they did not act on it. They did
Right.
not make a policy on it.
in Williamsburg and Duffy.
I won't know till next week. And at the high school, it didn't sound like the high school committee was like 100% behind this policy. However, the union is really advocating for it at the high school. I haven't really heard much from Norris. They were the first ones to approve this, but then, they weren't out there with banners or anything
Right,
saying.
and it might also be that, again, I know I was on the other side of this, but on the positive side of the union may have already known what their results were. They maybe already knew they were at 95%, so it was a win-win for them. Why push back on something that isn't going to impact them?
Yeah, I feel like
They
I'd want
already
to
know
hear
that.
from, we don't have, union representative right here tonight, but it would be great to hear from them at the next meeting on this. I don't want to make a policy we're at 96% to lose 5 people,
Yeah.
I think is where I'm at.
I think I'm comfortable with dropping it for now.
Is that a
If-
motion?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I move that we
give it
drop
leave to-
this.
Give it leave to withdraw.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, if the vaccination rate drops below 80%, I'm gonna bring it back up again.
Well, we always have right to revisit.
Yeah,
So-
okay,
Yes.
that's fair.
I'm
Which-
just saying
which
that
would-
as discussion.
Right, and we have the draft, it would come back in as its first read,
Yeah,
which we couldn't act on. We'd have to give it at least a 30-day posting
right.
to get to the second read. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Francine?
Just one question. I don't see anything in here that references applicants. Will people be excluded from employment opportunities if they do not show proof of vaccination?
We didn't make that.
I know you're passing on it, but I'm asking this question looking ahead a little bit.
Can you
In
say it
terms-
again? I have a hard time hearing.
In terms of hiring decisions,
Future
whether or
applicants.
not applicants can show proof of being vaccinated.
They would have to adopt a policy that says that.
Okay, so I know it's not part of this, but when and if
We were
you
to
do
bring this
something
back
like
up at
that,
some
would you
point.
want to include something to that effect? Is my question.
So technically, the communities that have already adopted this, it's silent on new applicants coming in.
No, it's not, because this is a policy, it's
After
a
they're
current
hired.
policy, so if you're employed by us, you have to follow this.
So this would, so if people
Would be a
would,
condition of employment going forward.
If you adopt the policy.
Correct.
Right,
yes,
right.
We're on the same page.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's just late.
that's okay.
Wasn't
No,
sure.
but that's all.
Okay.
You're going to hate me. If we were to make this a condition of future employment, would we have to go back to the first read?
Well, right now, there's nothing in here that says that.
I understand this.
So we'd have to edit it and then have it vetted and be brought, but no, it could come in as a third read. If that's the only edit that we're doing is adding that, but,
Never mind.
okay.
You're done.
On the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it's withdrawn. COVID student safety checks, and this says vote?
Yes,
Okay.
this is you.
All right, are we only talking about COVID safety checks or all three
All
options
three.
of testing? Okay.
Oh, that's
So
what
this
this
is what I
says.
would like to see happen. Steph, no, not like how you're gonna vote, but Stephanie will present 3 options to you. You can adapt one of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, none of them. So these are just your options, but all the school committees are voting on them, and I could tell you later how they all voted.
They've
Okay.
all voted differently.
Yes, they did.
Of course we did.
I know. Okay, so the options are symptomatic testing, where our nursing staff would have Abbott Binax Now rapid antigen tests in the office. And we could use those for individuals that develop symptoms at school. If they are positive, we initially treat them as a positive. We send them home, tell them to self-isolate. We still need to instruct them to get a PCR to verify that it is positive, and also so that positive result goes into Maven to initiate contact tracing. If they are negative, and they have on the symptom list that DESE provided this year, there are certain symptoms that are bolded. And if they have even one of the bolded symptoms, even with a negative test, we have to refer them for a PCR test. If they have any of the non-bolded symptoms, like one mild isolated symptom of the not bolded list, so some of those are like headache, fatigue, nasal congestion. If they have one symptom, we can test them. If it's negative, they can go back to class. If they have more than one of the non-bolded symptoms, we can test them. If it's negative, we still have to refer for the PCR test. So the only instance we don't have to send them for another test is if they have that mild isolated symptom. So as the guidance stands right now, if somebody has a mild isolated symptom that's not one of the bolded ones, we don't have to refer them for testing anyways. So if a kid has just just nasal congestion, we don't have to refer them for a test. If they have just a headache, we don't have to refer them for a test. So, in those, it's not to say that a kid that is actually COVID positive couldn't have just one single symptom, but, per the guidance, that we don't have to ask them to test. So it would provide some reassurance in those mild isolated symptoms. For the kids with multiple symptoms, or it could be used for staff too, staff with multiple symptoms or the bolded, positive or negative, they have to go and they have to get that PCR. The next option is the test and stay. The test and stay is for any close contacts that are not exempt from testing and quarantine protocols and that were exposed at school. So we couldn't include somebody in the test and stay program that was exposed at, a gathering outside of school or on a soccer team outside of school. And DESE's reasoning for not including those is that they felt that the in-school exposures, with all the mitigation strategies that we have in place, it's much less likely that there's going to be transmission in that instance, where these community exposures, we have no idea what that looked like or how close they were, and, you know, the chance of transmission, especially if they're a close contact to somebody in their household, is much greater, that they will actually transmit the virus. So for test and stay, we'd determine who is a close contact, and assuming their parent or the individual, if it's a staff member, has provided consent to participate, for 7 days from exposure, they would be able to come to school instead of quarantine. They get a rapid antigen test in the morning. If they're negative, they get to stay. If they're positive, they go. This is also assuming they're asymptomatic. There's naturally going to be a weekend in that time frame of the 7 days, and so on the weekend days, we are supposed to direct them to quarantine for those days. As DESE protocols are written, these individuals could ride the bus to school, get their test, and again, stay if they're negative and asymptomatic, or be sent home if they're positive, or if they develop symptoms, you know, we would kind of have to refer them for a PCR again, regardless of what the antigen test result was. And then the last option is the pool testing. And so that would be a weekly test. The way that I applied for it this year was it will be a double swab. So on testing day, each individual that's participating will have 2 nasal swabs done. One goes into the pooled sample, and then one goes into an individual sample, and then it all goes to the lab. And the reason that they do that is it kind of eliminates the need for the school to have to do any reflex testing if you have a positive pool. So if we end up with a positive pool, the lab will say, okay, who's in this pool? They go grab their individual tests, they run those right away, and then they report the positive individual to us. I will say for the pool testing, you know, it's not something that we could run without the support that the state has promised. We just don't have the staffing capacity to run a testing program, especially for a school as big as Norris. And so I've been working really hard trying to get us that staffing, because other schools have decided to move forward with it. We've gone through, we were approved at the end of August for this testing program, and since then we've gone through 3 testing coordinators. I had been assigned a staffing agency that never reached out to me, and I didn't even know I had been assigned to them until I reached out to the president of CIC Health, who's kind of organizing all of this. And so essentially where we're at now with getting support staff is they are trying to find another staffing agency for us. And my next meeting is tomorrow to kind of get an update and see where things are at. I've talked to a lot of other districts in Western Mass that are also just kind of waiting for help. Some of them decided, you know, they picked a test date and decided they were going to start, and were hoping that the state was going to just provide them the people they needed at that time. And for some, they didn't get the support, so they are just kind of running it on their own. Others said that they were sent people, but they hadn't been properly trained, so they kind of showed up like, all right, tell us what we need to do. And it was like, no, we asked for a program coordinator and somebody to, you know, really get this up and running in our school building. And so I guess the biggest thing I want you to know as you think about it is I do see some value in pool testing. You know, it would definitely provide a level of reassurance and certainly be a great mitigation strategy to add into what we're already doing. I would just beg of you, I guess, if you decide to move forward with that, that there is the caveat that we can only do that when we have the support that we need to
So
do
Stephanie,
it.
how much more support would you need for the pool testing within Norris? Is it
So-
one person, 2, 4, 5?
So I think we would need the program coordinator to sort of oversee the logistics, handle ordering supplies as they're running low. They would handle all of the consents, creating the pools, kind of managing the software and data entry, checking those results to see if we do have any positive pools, and then assisting our nursing staff with contact tracing if need be. And then we would need individuals to actually collect the specimens. And, you know, I think that could really vary on how many people we need depending on what we want it to look like. So Frontier is doing pool testing, and the way that they're doing it is they have 4 carts going around to classrooms with all of the supplies needed, and they can just do it right there, and then they move on to the next classroom. But they have 4 carts, and each cart has 2 people staffed to it. So one is either doing the swabbing or supervising the swab if the child is able to self-swab, and then another is actually labeling the tubes, making sure everything's going into the right place. And there's a barcode that you have to scan it into the software. And when they've also been doing this since the spring, and when I last talked to their nurse leader, they said they're kind of team of 8. They can do about just over 100 people in an hour. So, you know, it depends also on the percent of the Norris population that actually consents to participate, how many people we need, how long that would take.
If we were doing pool testing, how many times a week would that happen?
Just once a week.
So is it feasible? I mean, Hampshire Regional is the only one bigger than us for the population. So there's 5 schools. I know we're gonna get to the votes. But couldn't there be a team and, hey, Wednesday's Norris Day?
Yes,
And that's when
we
pool
talked
testing
about
happens.
hiring, using ESSER grant money, other towns' ESSER grant money, and hiring a full-time person for the district if we can find somebody qualified.
And do they need to be RNs?
No.
They do not need to be RNs.
Any of them?
No,
Okay.
no.
I gotta go through the committee first. But so under.
5 words? She counted them.
Under the,
I have heard other schools that are doing it set up like a station in a common area and have classrooms just kind of come down and do like a walkthrough, so that limits the number of staff that you need to run the program, but it's increasing the amount of time that students are out of the classroom, having to get there and then get back.
Of the 3 for Norris, as our head nurse, professional, which one, if any, are you recommending for consideration? Or are you leaving it up to the committee?
I would recommend pool testing with the caveat that we need
The resources?
the resources. Yeah, it is not something that our nursing staff can take on.
Okay.
And, you know, to that same point, even, you know, if you're considering the symptomatic and the test and stay, I think even that is going to be a lot to ask of our nursing staff. You know, the COVID case management, and the just acuity of that office. You know, we have a fair amount of students at Norris that have complex medical needs and require a lot of daily care. And
Let's not forget, we cut the hours of both nurses because of lack of funding.
right.
Does administration agree with that recommendation?
Well, I mean,
I mean, you can be against each other, it's okay. I just-
for the reason of, tell me why. That's, I just want to know, like, for the purpose of knowing how many kids are positive that we don't know are positive.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't feel strongly that Norris needs to do pool testing. I just, I don't, no. I would be okay if you said, Steph, we're not doing any of them. I would be perfectly fine with that decision. I just think if you are going to choose any of them, pool testing is the most worthwhile. It's also the most work logistically and something that we just cannot feasibly handle. And, you know, if the state can really pull through and get us trained professionals that could run a testing program for us that's efficient and kids aren't losing a lot of time out of class, then that's great. But I also am very, not super optimistic that we're gonna get the level of support that we would need to have a well-oiled machine running.
The benefit of test and stay, and I know it would be more work for our nurses, because it is a rapid test that they could do, is that kids wouldn't have to quarantine for 10 days at home. That's huge.
So test and stay would only happen in the nurse's office upon a referral
If they were identified as close contacts.
by a teacher or staff and then sent to the nurse's office.
So our nurses would know who
Right.
they are.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, when we learn of a positive case, they're the ones really doing all the legwork to determine, you know, they've gone in on weekends to measure desks and figure out exactly how far apart and looking at seating charts. So they would know who those individuals are, and then if that individual has consent, they would participate in the testing. But again, I think that would be a lot to put on their plate.
Okay.
On that issue, though, just to follow, because it's direct follow-up to that, how many close contacts have been identified in Norris this school year?
So that's a good question. I think the largest number we had was 3, tied to one specific case. And those are the close contacts that have to actually test and quarantine. There are many more close contacts that are technically close contacts, but because of the circumstances of the encounter, they are exempt from testing and quarantine protocols. And those individuals could not participate in test and stay. It would only be the people that would otherwise have to be quarantined at home.
So assuming all 3 of those children's parents consented to the testing, that would be 3 kids for realistically, 5 school days, 6 school days?
Yes.
That would have to do a 15-minute rapid result test?
Yeah, so they would have to potentially come into the nursing office, or we would want to maybe consider an alternative space where we have our, you know, our students with diabetes checking in the nursing office in the morning. You know, do we want to be exposing other students that are coming in while these kids are waiting for their tests? But, you know, it would take a little time to put on their PPE and then administer the test, and then it's about 15 minutes to get the result, and then documentation and follow-up.
Could they do
from
all
there.
3 simultaneously? Like, I mean, you space them out in the room.
It's an aerosolizing procedure.
Yeah.
So it causes sometimes people to sneeze or, you know, so you try to do it in a very well ventilated space, preferably outside.
Yeah.
So,
And so then you've got one nurse outside for however long it takes, and one in the office managing all of the other issues.
I see a lot of value in the test and stay as an option that you can opt in or out of, but if you opt into, it prevents these absences. since we've had not a lot of in-school transmission. I think I see a lot of value in test and stay. I do not see much value in symptomatic testing, and I would not vote for that. I just see no value, and I can go into detail if you wanted.
I agree with you.
Pooled testing, if we have the resources available, I think are our road towards moving away from masks, I'm hoping. I think it's another mitigation layer, and I think it provides, for those who want to opt into it, because you can still opt out of it, it's a voluntary procedure, it's not mandatory. I think that offers a lot of support for our students as far as, it's just another mitigation layer that maybe we can start doing more activities and, dropping some other as cases come down, and then eventually, hopefully some days these masks go away too, right? So we don't want, I see value in test and stay and pooled testing and no value in symptomatic.
Austin, anything?
I would say, basically the same things. I would love to see an exchange of pooled testing for masking, because then that's, it's a little bit higher risk, but maybe because of where our numbers are, we're able to get there. But obviously we'd have to have a separate discussion about that. So I'd be willing to approve or vote for approving pooled testing and test and stay. I just don't know that we're gonna get the population of families that we need to sign on to pool testing to sign on to it. It is voluntary. So just thinking about, people that might be more willing to tolerate risk when it comes to the pandemic, they are probably a similar overlap of the families that are not willing to sign up for pool testing. So I don't think we would capture actually the data that we want to.
On that note, was there a specific question in the survey that asked of the parents if they would participate in pool testing?
Well, the results were kind of skewed, yeah,
Was it maybe the way we worded the question?
yeah, the way it
prior
was
to-
worded, it would be it was meant for parents of unvaccinated kids. So like at the high school numbers, they were skewed because I didn't ask vaccinated. So one of the issues that a high school parent brought forth was very legitimate for the high school parent. At the high school, they have a rotating schedule. And so I don't know logistically how that would even work. And so this parent had said, well, geez, I want to participate in options 1 and 2, but not 3. The permission slip clearly lists all 3 options, or whichever ones you guys agreed to. It is not an a la carte menu for parents, so parents can't say, oh, I'll do symptomatic, but I won't do the other 2. However, when I raise this question with other superintendents, what they've been doing is, so like if you didn't want your child to participate in pool testing, when the nurse came around with her cart, your child just wouldn't stand up. So even if we're on the list, they're not gonna force you to get the test. So that's how other districts have gone about.
Which probably works at the high school setting, but I don't know about telling the second grader not to stand up when the nurse says stand up. You know what I mean?
I think it's cute. That's great that they listen to adults, but I'm just telling you second graders.
But yeah.
Stephanie, is the plan for pool testing, I'm not sure if you know this, to have the testing outdoors or in a ventilated space, because I'm picturing this not in the classrooms.
So I think that would be ideal, if we had a station set up either in, the gym, if that would even work, pending, when specials and stuff are, or outside. And having kids just rotate through, I think would be the easiest and the safest, but again, it's the most time that they're out of the classroom. If we have to move them versus just like a cart going to the classroom.
Right. So is a possible solution, since we're so effective in transporting our children, to just put the buses back on their regular schedule, which gets them to school 15 minutes earlier? Now, I realize the reason we moved the schedules was because the kids were getting there and staff weren't on the clock yet. So, right, so that creates another thing, but it may just be advancing overtime dollars to staff to come, but that's another whole issue.
Walkers, that doesn't capture.
No, but it gives you that 15-minute window as a possibility. I'll give you your 5 words, go ahead.
This is my question for you. For pool testing, if you have 500 kids going through the same line, seeing the same person, how is that safe for the 500th kid? Are you talking like 500 pairs of gloves, or how are you doing that, and what % is needed for pool testing?
Yeah, so that's a really valid point. For each swab, you know, the individual that is collecting them, assuming that they're collecting them, and not having kids self-swab, because that's an option. But they would have to change gloves and hand sanitize in between each one. It's not required that people be in full PPE for the pool testing, so they don't have to necessarily be in a gown and a face shield and all that. But they would need to be wearing a mask and gloves, and if they're actually doing the swabbing, then they're having to change their gloves and wash their hands or hand sanitize in between. You know, it's also, you know, if there's positives in there, it's exposure to the person there. Yeah, absolutely.
There's 499 kids in line.
Yeah.
As long as they're involved.
Yeah. It's a relevant concern.
Any other, Dylan?
All 500 wouldn't be standing in line at once.
They're still going to go through the same person. If
I
500 kids are going
understand.
to you, and you have it on your gown, or you have it on your gloves, or something happened because you're doing it 500 times in a row, I don't want my kid going, I mean, my kid's number 1, maybe, but if my kid's number 500,
Yeah, but I mean, it's standard procedures to hand wash, use hand sanitizer, and change your gloves. So this is like universal precautions between different students. So that would, the person would be trained to be doing that.
And I think too, you know, as much as able, we could have students self-swab.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
that's the ideal, is that, you know, they're going to a station and they're using that bottom part of their nose, their anterior nose, and doing like just a simple swab, and it takes 5 seconds. A 6-year-old is probably, my 6-year-old is probably not going to cooperate with this, so like, you know, it's going to be a
There's
challenge. The 6-year-olds are going to need help, the preschoolers are going to need help if they're doing it.
Dylan,
Thank you.
anything? Go ahead.
You have to ask. Just the counterpoint to the rapid test just is, if you get a positive test, you can identify close contacts without that 72-hour waiting period for a positive PCR to come in. That would be the only counterpoint to the value of a symptomatic test. If you get a positive test in the nurse's office, you can immediately start contact tracing. Whereas if you get a negative test, you send them home, you get a positive PCR test. And that was a discussion that we had at the high school. The other point to that on the pool testing was, and this also came up at the Hampshire Regional discussion, was that the original benchmark was 80%. Now we're hearing that there's a value to it no matter what the percentage is. Is that correct?
DESE has sort of said at this point that they will let districts or schools participate regardless of percent of population that's consented in.
So on this issue, DESE will allow us to decide.
Right.
Right.
So can you tell us how the school committees voted?
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, all right, let's try and remember. So Williamsburg,
Just pool testing.
pool testing only, with the expectation that CIC Health provides people to run the program. Westhampton did pool testing and test and stay, with the expectation that we'll get the support staff for the pool testing. Hampshire Regional approved all 3, but at the discretion of administration, what gets rolled out. And then, who am I missing? Chesterfield Goshen approved symptomatic and test and stay. So we are all over the place.
One question, then I
I'm
want to
just
wrap up
curious
this meeting.
if this is just like a informational question. At the high school level, because it wouldn't apply to our kids, are the pool test kids vaccinated and unvaccinated, or just unvaccinated?
Both.
It's both. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something else that has changed. So Desi had told us or advised us to only pool test unvaccinated kids, and it seems that no other district is listening to that. They're vaccinating adults, kids, whoever wants to be vaccinated. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Let's not say that.
Oh, my God.
We are
Pool
not
testing.
vaccinating anyone.
Oh, my God, no, pool testing, I'm so sorry. That they're allowing adults and students, vaccinated, unvaccinated, to pool test.
Yeah. They were originally discouraging vaccinated people, and I think they got a lot of heat for it, and we're kind of like, have everybody participate.
Right.
In our last update.
That was a money thing.
Wish,
Yeah, they're trying to save some resources that they've offered up.
what's,
Okay,
what's
so
the
can I make a
pleasure of the
motion?
committee? Yes.
Can I make a motion that we adopt pool testing and with CIC support and test and stay?
Both with CIC support or only the pool testing with CIC
The
support?
pool testing needs CIC support.
And the other one we would just roll out?
I think we could just roll, do you think we could just roll that out? I think we could, it looks like small numbers to me, but
So it's not just the actual testing, right? In order for them to be able to do the testing, they need to now, our nurses need to be trained on the software so that they're able to put in the kids' information, manage consents. They need to be able to track test results so they're reported to the state. And they have to do all the Abbott by Next Now training. So this is gonna be, you know, maybe not super extensive, but
Mhm.
several hours that we're gonna ask them to be trained and implement this testing program when we've already cut back their hours and expect them to do the same job that they always had to do in a pandemic.
So, question, can we use some of the funding to move them back up to 1.0 and have them take that on with the 0.1?
What funding?
You have no funding.
We're not paying any funding for it?
For what?
They're paying the staff funding, the
They're
CI
paying
whatever.
CIC. If they can find the CIC, can find
Yeah,
people to
so
bring in.
I don't know how
So
DESI
why
and
can't we designate our own
CIC.
people?
Amherst actually asked that. They wrote a letter to the state asking, instead of giving us CIC health support, give us the money and we'll hire our own people. I don't know if they got a response or not, but.
So did Westhampton pass their motion with CIC support for both measures? Okay, that's what we want to do. So that's my
Well,
motion.
And I'm good with that, but just keep in mind, we are the only town that's using our ESSER money. All the other towns have ESSER money that they could use to supplement this particular project. So, like if Westhampton didn't do it with CIC, they have a pool. We've spent our money to retain 5 people that we gotta lay off in a year. So, so your motion is pool testing, test and stay, both subject to CIC support.
Right.
Which is paid for by the state.
Right.
Great.
Correct.
Which doesn't touch our funding.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Just to reiterate, this is with parent consent.
Right. You can opt in or out.
Correct. Which was always the case.
Yep.
Parents have to make the decision.
Yes.
That's it.
Yep.
We're just making it available.
Yes.
Right.
Hearing no discussion? Last call? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Done. Request for additional CARES funding, last item on the agenda. So, subject to our last meeting, we put in a request for $12,501 up to $41,000. Those both items are pending before the select board for reappropriate. So the $533,000 of CARES money that the town received, it appears that roughly 100,000 of it has not been appropriated yet and needs to be appropriated by December 31st. So department heads should have been instructed today or tomorrow to submit requests for consideration of repurposing unused CARES money. So I would suggest that we reiterate or resend the email that I sent on behalf of the committee for the $41,000 for reimbursement for the HVAC upgrades. I would also go ahead and throw in there, calculate out the additional 10%, restoring the nurses for the remainder of this calendar year. Because I do believe that would qualify to come out of the CARES Act. It doesn't make us whole for the rest of the year, but it gets us between now and December 31st to bump them up to the 1.0 FTE and ask for the money. Because October 26th, when the select board meets next, the town administrator is going to put through his recommendation. This is how we got to spend the money, and we got 45 days to spend it. In this particular case, in neither one of these scenarios do we have to order anything, buy anything. You know, for the nurses, we just got to submit certification of payroll records, which goes through the treasurer's office. We've already submitted the invoice to prove that we paid the $41,000 for the I-waves and that. I would suggest that we be proactive in that and send it in. If we get it, we don't get it. I can't imagine that our nurses wouldn't take the additional hours for the remainder of the year. And that's my only update on that. If you have anything else, custodians, anything like that you need related to COVID.
What we worked on in that one classroom, that could be reimbursed probably.
Money that's already been spent, they have invoices. Those would be the things I would suggest to put in. Because I anticipate.
I don't think I received anything from anybody asking us to appropriate.
This was all discussed last night at the select board meeting.
Okay.
So the town administrator may not have had time today to get through it all, but tomorrow being Thursday before the weekend, there was a very firm deadline for all department heads, and Norris is a department. So the money's got to get spent. Or we give it back to the state to support CIC.
Now, the high school's implementing test and stay they did not have the CIC health caveat. Because I believe that they can do that part of their job. So I think that if you make these nurses whole, I think they'd be willing to take that on.
At least for the remainder of the year.
We're
We can
talking
start the
there were
process.
2 close contacts last week. We're not talking tons of, you're not gonna get CIC health to come in to test two kids. It's not gonna happen.
Right.
Our nurses, I think if you make them whole, I understand it's more work, but it's very minimal.
Okay. Anything else? Next meeting is November 10th, 6 PM, second Wednesday of the month. Have agenda items in a week ahead of time.
They would have missed the answer to my question.
What was your question?
Which one was that?
Then I emailed about the 10,000 versus the 600.
Oh, no, the superintendent's going to answer that one, but that's going to be via email. She's getting documents to come up with that number.
Oh, about the ESSER money?
Yeah.
Yeah, I emailed our business manager.
Okay.
I haven't,
I was just curious when I saw it, and again, I don't know how that works, so I was just curious.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah. Francine, did you raise your hand, or are you good?
Just to let everyone know, if you tried to communicate via email with anyone in town hall today, the internet was down all day, so if you didn't get a response, hopefully it'll be up and you'll hear from them tomorrow.
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.